Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning and a warm welcome to the UK ASEAN Business Forum 2026. If we can invite you to take your seats, we will get underway. My name is Alan Lai. I'm with the UK ASEAN Business Council based in Brunei and delighted to be here in London with you all today, here at our flagship event, the UK ASEAN Business Forum. Just a few housekeeping notes to share with you. The usual, please turn off your phones or turn them to silent. Toilets are available down the hall. Not expecting a fire alarm, so please do keep that in mind if that does happen. And we have a jam-packed all things ASEAN program today. The latest details are on the webpage through the email which you received from your confirmation. But with that, let's get underway. Could I please invite to the stage Stuart Tate, Head of Commercial Banking UK at HSBC and Vice Chair of the UK ASEAN Business Council, to say a few words to kick us off. Stuart, please come on up.
It's always so difficult to follow Alan because he enunciates so much better than I do with my Yorkshire accent, but I'll try. So good morning, everyone. I am really pleased to welcome you all here today to HSBC's global head office in Canary Wharf. Glad you found the building. It's not always straightforward if you come in through the underground, but good to see you here. And I'm welcoming you both as the head of commercial banking for HSBC in the UK, but also as the vice chair of the UK ASEAN Business Council. So we're delighted to host the UK ASEAN Business Forum today. It's the third time that we've done that, and it's a real honor for us to host you all. A few words about HSBC. We're deeply committed to supporting the enduring partnership between the UK and ASEAN because we're a long-established foreign bank in the region. In fact, we've been doing business in ASEAN for over 130 years. So it's deeply ingrained in our culture, our business culture. And personally, as someone who started his career in ASEAN, I've seen the relationship, like many of you will have done, just go from strength to strength. It's been a pretty straight upward path in my view. And that includes September last year, when I had the privilege of leading the UK business delegation to the ASEAN Economic Ministers meeting in Kuala Lumpur. Now, 2026 is the Philippines chairmanship of ASEAN, as you will all know. But what you may not know is it's the 80th anniversary of UK-Philippine relations. And so I'm particularly pleased to welcome today Secretary Cristina Aldeguer Roque, the Secretary of Trade and Industry of the Philippines, as well as Joey Concepcion III, who's the chairman of ASEAN BAC Philippines, and His Excellency Teodoro Locsin, the ambassador of the Philippines to the United Kingdom. A warm welcome also to our trade envoys, Naz Shah and George Freeman. Now, turning to one of the key topics of the day, trade. Trade is probably more in our minds than ever because of events over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Trade is in HSBC's DNA. We were founded more than 160 years ago. The purpose of this company, the aim of it has always been to connect East and West. And it's that internationalization, that internationalism, that remains an absolute core part of our mission, serving our clients here and around the world. So we know firsthand, again, like you do, that trade is absolutely essential to growth and prosperity for all of us and our people. Now, encouragingly, despite some of the news that's out there and the global headwinds that we're all aware of, HSBC's latest Global Trade Pulse survey does show that both the ASEAN and the UK businesses are optimistic. This isn't our view, this is the view of our customers, and they're optimistic about their ability to grow their international trade. So the synergies between the UK and ASEAN, we believe, are very clear. ASEAN is one of the bright spots of growth across the world stage. The region is expected to become one of the world's 4 largest economies by 2050, which isn't as far away as it may sound. ASEAN's growing economic integration, the strong fundamentals, and the expanding middle class continue to position the region as a key hub for both global investment and supply chains. And we've seen that with tariffs coming in, for example, the importance of ASEAN when it comes to global supply chains. Now, at the same time, the UK is the world's 6th largest economy with particular strengths, and we should call those out. Strengths in AI, strength in life sciences, actually strength in the creative economies that may be overlooked, and of course, financial and professional services. We're a services economy primarily. And British businesses, many of you here today, have got a role to play in ASEAN's ongoing transformation, because you can bring certain expertise, and we can gain expertise by working with others in ASEAN, but we can bring expertise to areas ranging from infrastructure through to innovation, as well as financing the transition of net zero, something that we're particularly active in. So it's a pivotal year for us all. 2026 marks the 5th anniversary of the UK's dialogue partnership with ASEAN. And I look forward to hearing more from the panelists today, and we do have a wide range of panelists. We're going to be speaking openly with all of us at this conference, but we're going to hear from a wide range what the next 5 years might bring. Where is this going? What more can we all do? How do we take advantage? And this year, the CPTPP is expected to begin negotiation talks with both the Philippines and Indonesia, joining the UK and several other ASEAN member states in what's an exciting global trade bloc. So in closing, I just want to make the point that it's fitting that we're meeting today in Canary Wharf. Some of you may visit here regularly, some rarely. But the history of this piece of land actually is incredibly interesting, and it's important for today because where we sit now was once one of the world's busiest ports. Hard to believe when you look out the window. And it served as a really vital conduit for the trade primarily of commodities between the UK and actually markets around the world. But that was before the arrival of containerized shipping. The container changed everything for trade in merchandise. And the trajectory of this area changed forever because of containerization. So the point of talking about this is that we can no longer ignore the fact that global trade is going through a significant period of reconfiguration right now. And I'm sure that'll be the topic of some of the debate today. And the evolution of Canary Wharf from what was a global trading powerhouse to what today is one of the world's preeminent and actually high-tech financial centers is a reminder that while change is constant, it can also bring significant opportunities. Who would have known this port area for commodities would have turned into what it is today? So, importantly, please enjoy the rest of today. Enjoy making the time to meet other participants. It's very much what this is about. Hear the new ideas from the panelists and others that are with us. It's a real opportunity to open up our thinking, take a step back, innovate, actually to challenge. Challenge is important, and to deepen some of the partnerships that already exist and to begin new ones. So I look forward to hearing all your insights this morning. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for joining us here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart, for those very kind remarks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, would you please give a very warm welcome to the champion of ASEAN here in the UK and Chief Executive of the UK ASEAN Business Forum, Mr. Ian Gibbons, for his welcome address.
I'm never quite sure Mr. Ly's introduction is the champion of ASEAN. I like that. We'll now take that as a name badge. Going forward, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Stuart Tate, Head of Commercial Banking, thank you very much. George Freeman, Trade Envoy, Ambassador Loxing. Naz Shah, Trade Envoy, also to Indonesia and ASEAN. Lord Vasey, of course. Patrick Chua, the Executive Director from ASEAN BAC. Joey Concepcion, the Chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council. Good morning and welcome to the 5th annual UK ASEAN Business Forum. So I would like to first just thank Stuart Tate, not just for being Stuart Tate as his role at HSBC, but the time he gives us as Vice Chair of the UK ASEAN Business Council, and the fact that you have been such strong supporters, HSBC, in terms of being headline sponsors for the UK ASEAN Business Forum. And I'm looking forward to that partnership continuing for a further 3 years going forward from now. So thank you. But thank you also to Mott MacDonald, ACCA and Prudential for their sponsorship also of today. I'm sorry to say that Joey Concepcion cannot be with us because he unfortunately could not travel, partly due to the impact of what is going on in the Middle East right now. So I'm sorry about that. But this year is particularly significant as far as UK ASEAN is concerned. Not only, as Stuart said, is it the 5th UK ASEAN Business Forum, but it's also the 5th anniversary of our dialogue partnership and the implementation of the new UK ASEAN 5-year plan of action. That's hugely important. And the flagship event this year sadly comes at a time of continued global upheaval, with the war in the Middle East impacting all of us. And unfortunately, this has also impacted on the travel plans of Secretary Roque, we're sorry to say. She has been unable to travel to the UK to deliver her keynote speech, but we look forward to hearing from her shortly. But I think over the last 5 years, this forum has grown, and I would say this, wouldn't I, from strength to strength. That is due to the partnership of HSBC, but it's also due to the partnership of our brilliant set of sponsors and directors of the Business Council. So I think we work phenomenally hard, but we're only as good as the brilliant support we get from our directors and sponsors. So it's a continued thanks from me to you. But the actual, the forum itself is about bringing leaders together, as Stuart alluded to, from business and importantly government, to explore how we deepen that vital economic cooperation, the partnership and collaboration, which is absolutely vital to making a success of everything we do each and every day. Now, the theme of this year's forum is shaping the next phase of UK ASEAN trade and investment, and that absolutely reflects the ambition of the forum today. But as it evolves, we will look to continue and grow that collaboration across important areas such as energy transition, digital innovation, creative industries, and importantly, sustainable growth. Today's programme will explore those opportunities with insights from a superb array of speakers, which I'm very grateful for them giving up their time, and again, across importantly academia, business, and government. But now it gives me great pleasure to invite our very good friend, and I'm genuinely sorry that he can't be here, Joey Concepcion, the chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, will give his welcome remarks, and we look forward to hearing from him today and look forward to seeing him in Manila in April and also later in the year at the Business and Investment Summit, also in Manila. So it's about partnership, it's about collaboration. It starts now, but it continues throughout the year. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. It's turning evening here in the Philippines. My apologies for not being able to make it to the UK. As you know, being the chair of the ASEAN, this is one of my most challenging hosting. We hosted in 2017 under the President Rodrigo Duterte. So I asked also Patrick Chua, who's our executive director, to be there, and he's there with you. So let me start by saying to the Honorable Lord Basie, Philippine Ambassador Teddy Boy Locsin Jr., distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to extend my warmest greetings to everyone gathered in London today. I truly regret that I cannot be with you in person for this milestone forum, but I'm pleased that our Executive Director, Patrick Chua, is there to represent the ASEAN-backed Philippines. Patrick is well equipped to present our strategic roadmap in detail and address any specific questions you may have regarding our 2026 programs. Most notably, our flagship event, the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit, ABIS, this November. As we celebrate the 5th anniversary of the United Kingdom as an ASEAN dialogue partner, the timing of this forum is impeccable. Our theme for the 2026 chairmanship is Advancing Prosperity for All. This is more than a slogan. It is a call to action for inclusive, resilient, and forward-looking growth. We are focusing our efforts on 4 strategic pillars: people, planet, platform, and productivity. Whether it's empowering MSMEs, women, the youth, through our people pillar, accelerating the green transition and food security under planet, leveraging fintech and AI with our platform initiatives, or enhancing the ease of doing business under productivity. We see that the UK as a vital strategic partner in every sector. I want to issue a personal invitation to each of you. Come to the Philippines in 2026. For us, this year is a pivotal milestone. We are celebrating the 25th anniversary of ASEAN BAC and the launch of the AEC Strategic Plan 2026 to 2030. For the Philippines, this is a once-in-an-11-year opportunity to shape the regional agenda. I've had the great privilege of chairing in 2017, and our next opportunity will not come until 2037. We are determined to make this year the most impactful yet, especially for our MSMEs and the people at the bottom of the pyramid. The road to 2026 runs to Manila. We want the UK business community to be at the center of this journey. In this regard, Minister Malhotra may take this opportunity to extend a formal invitation to His Excellency Prime Minister Keir Starmer to join us in Manila and deliver the keynote address at the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit, ABIS, this November. His leadership and the UK's perspective would be invaluable as we navigate a new era of regional integration amidst geo-economic fragmentation. Dear friends in the UK, the Philippines is your primary entry point to a 4 trillion regional economy, poised to become the 4th largest economy in the world. We invite you to support us, to partner with us, and to be part of ABIS. The knowledge partners as we mount this historic chairmanship by partnering with ASEAN BAC, you are not just gaining visibility, you're gaining a seat at the table where the future of ASEAN trade and policy is being written. Patrick and our team is and will be open to explore how you can better participate in this historic chairmanship of the Philippines. We look forward to welcoming you to our islands and pursuing shared goals as we navigate our future together and truly advance prosperity for all. Thank you, and I wish you a productive forum.
Thank you very much, Ian and Joey. And Joey, we look forward to leading and bringing a business delegation to Manila for the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit and some of the other engagements which we'll highlight over the course of the forum as well. ASEAN is a fascinating part of the world. It offers tremendous opportunities, yet does have many challenges to achieve the growth its huge population needs. To tell us more, we're delighted to have 2 keynote addresses this morning. First, to share with us the UK's engagement with ASEAN on what the next phase of UK ASEAN trade and investment will look like over the next 5 years and how we are shaping it. Would you please give a very warm welcome to the chair of the UK ASEAN Business Forum, the Right Honourable Lord Vaizey of Didcot. Ed, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alan, and thank you as well to the team at the UK ASEAN Business Council who've done such a great job in organising today's forum. Ian, Ben, Alan and Clarissa, you've done outstanding work, and welcome to all our distinguished guests. It's wonderful to have the ambassador from the Philippines here and the High Commissioner from Singapore, who I bumped into earlier, as well as our two trade envoys, Naz Shah and George Freeman. And again, thank you as well to HSBC for hosting us yet again today. Stuart Tate is the most generous Yorkshireman I've ever met. It's quite a low bar, but he's exceeded it. And as Ian said, all our members who make the UK ASEAN Business Council such an effective force, but in particular to Mott MacDonald, the ACCA and the Prudential, who sponsor so many of our events, and particularly when we go abroad. As Ian said, this is the 5th UK ASEAN Business Forum, and it also coincides with our 5th anniversary for the UK as an ASEAN dialogue partner. And we've seen tremendous change over those last 5 years. In 2021, our trade with ASEAN was around £38 billion. Today, it's £60 billion, and it shows that Southeast Asia has become one of the most important regions for the United Kingdom's global economic engagement. It means that ASEAN is one of our most important trading partners. With Japan, we have about £33 billion worth of trade. With South Korea, it's $15 billion. With India, it's $47 billion. With Latin America and the Caribbean, it's $45 billion. With Australia, it's $23 billion. With New Zealand, it's $4 billion. So ASEAN tops all of those. It puts ASEAN in the top 10 of our trading partners. We're also a huge investor in ASEAN. Foreign direct investment into ASEAN rose by 8% to $226 billion, even as global FDI declined by 11%. And also ASEAN companies are investing in the United Kingdom. They're bringing their capital, their ideas and innovation into our economy. So it reminds us that ASEAN is one of the world's most important engines of economic growth, and why a business forum like this matters so much. We created this business forum to bring together business leaders, policymakers, and institutions to focus on a simple but crucial question. How do we continue to strengthen our trade and investment relationship? And as we always strive to do, our forum will try and answer this question, and my many thanks in advance to the excellent speakers who will join us to share their insights. We work very closely in terms of engaging with ASEAN's high-level meetings. We go to the ASEAN Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors meeting, the Economic Ministers meeting, the Energy Business Forum, and of course the Business Investment Summit, which is always the highlight of the year, being held in the Philippines this November. And it's at these platforms that we ensure that the voice of UK business is heard in the conversation shaping ASEAN's economic future. And as Alan said, I wanted to focus on what I think those opportunities are, because ASEAN is home to 700 million people. It's got a growing middle class. Its combined GDP stands at around $4 trillion, and it's a region that continues to attract strong levels of investment. One of the engines behind this growth is the strong internal economic integration that's being brought about by ASEAN. Something like 20% of ASEAN's total trade takes place within ASEAN itself. And that is supported by initiatives such as the enhanced ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement, which helps strengthen regulatory harmonization and deepens the supply chains across Southeast Asia. It means it becomes a more integrated and more predictable regional market for business. And one of the most important projects, in my view, is the work on energy security. As everyone knows, we meet in the shadow of war and what is happening in the Middle East, and it just reminds us how essential energy is to the global economy. We know the impact what is happening in the Middle East already has. Countries such as the Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand have introduced measures to manage electricity demand and conserve energy including adjustments to working arrangements. So this highlights an important reality. Energy resilience is absolutely at the heart of economic resilience. So the ASEAN power grid and accelerating energy transition is absolutely critical. By strengthening cross-border electricity connections, the grid will allow ASEAN to share power more efficiently, to integrate renewable energy, to improve resilience and support long-term economic growth. And that represents an opportunity for us in the UK because British companies bring world-class expertise in energy finance. Stuart alluded to it in terms of the work that HSBC does. We have expertise in engineering, grid management, and infrastructure development. But we can also support emerging decarbonisation technologies as well, low-carbon hydrogen, advanced civil nuclear technologies, and carbon capture and storage. These technologies will help enable net zero transition plans. It will help countries reduce environmental and climate impacts and maintain a reliable energy supply. The other major opportunity, of course, lies in the digital economy. ASEAN already hosts one of the fastest growing digital economies in the world, driven obviously by a young population, rapid urbanization, rising connectivity. There are more than 500 million internet users in Southeast Asia, and the region is a global center for innovation in e-commerce, digital payments, fintech, and online services. At the moment, the prediction is that the ASEAN digital economy could reach $1 trillion by 2030, but with the implementation of something like the Digital Economy Framework Agreement, we could easily see that reach $2 trillion, because that agreement will be critical in shaping the digital future of the region, because it will help cross-border digital trade, it will improve data governance, it will support digital payments across borders, it will create a much more predictable regulatory environment for business operating across ASEAN markets. And again, the UK is well placed to support ASEAN's growth in this area. We have huge expertise in fintech, in digital services, in artificial intelligence, in cybersecurity. The Chancellor today will announce a huge investment in quantum technology as well. And there are already British companies playing a role in supporting the digital payments infrastructure, companies like Revolut and Wise, who are members of our Business Council. We work on financial inclusion, and we work on digital trade platforms as well. So there is enormous scope for the UK and ASEAN to collaborate in building secure, open, and innovative digital ecosystems that support businesses and consumers. As you know, because I never stop telling people, I used to be the Creative Industries Minister under David Cameron. So I was particularly thrilled that the ASEAN Business Advisory Council have made the creative economy a priority for this year's chairmanship. From film and fashion to animation and the performing arts, creative sectors are hugely powerful engines of innovation and export growth. The United Kingdom's creative industries are globally recognized leaders. PwC is looking at developing a research paper to explore the opportunities for collaboration between the UK and ASEAN in the creative industries. The work will help identify how our creative sectors can work more closely together to unlock new markets and new ideas. Sustainability will also continue to define the next phase of cooperation between Britain and ASEAN. For the energy transition to sustainable finance and green infrastructure, the challenge before us is clear. But so too is the opportunity to build economies that are not only more prosperous, but more resilient and sustainable for the future. That is why the Memorandum of Understanding being signed today between the ACCA and the ASEAN Business Advisory Council on sustainable accounting and reporting is so important. I'm delighted that it also covers digital, human capital, and professional standards. It represents a practical step towards mobilizing the capital required for ASEAN's transition to a low-carbon economy. As I said, all this is taking place in a world that is becoming increasingly uncertain. Supply chains are under pressure, energy markets are volatile, geopolitical tensions are rising. Yet I think ASEAN continues to demonstrate something really remarkable. It remains committed to openness, it remains committed to cooperation and also to regional integration. For investors and businesses around the world, ASEAN offers something that is increasingly rare. It offers stability, it offers growth, and it offers boundless opportunities. It is, as I always say, a sort of sea of certainty in an uncertain global economy. So let me conclude by saying this. Over the past 5 years, the UK-ASEAN partnership has grown stronger, it's grown deeper, and it's become ever more ambitious. The ASEAN-UK Plan of Action that has been successfully delivered and concludes this year set out collaboration across political security, economic and socio-cultural spheres. It reflected the UK's meaningful contribution to ASEAN. So a new plan of action is now being negotiated with ASEAN, and it will help us align the priorities of the UK's trade and industrial strategies with ASEAN's community vision for 2045. It will focus on areas like financial services, regulatory reform, clean energy, digital technology. So we as a Business Council look forward to continuing to support this important agreement. The past 5 years have been incredibly important in establishing the depth of our relationship, but the next 5 will perhaps matter even more. And the success of that partnership will depend on many of the businesses that are gathered in this room today. So I encourage them to invest in the region, to build partnerships, and join the UK ASEAN Business Council and our partners as we engage with ASEAN, and particularly when we work with the Philippines in the year ahead to be part of ASEAN's remarkable growth journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ed, for that keynote address outlining the plans for this year and certainly over the next 5 years as well. Each year, the chair of the ASEAN Economic Ministers meeting does come and joins us at the UK ASEAN Business Forum. Her Excellency Cristina Roque, the Secretary of Trade and Industry of the Philippines and chair of this year's ASEAN Economic Ministers meeting, had confirmed to come, but as Ian mentioned, unfortunately, due to the developments in the Middle East, was not able to join us in person because of the impact it's having on the Philippines and ASEAN widely as well. But we're very grateful that she has recorded a video message for us for this forum. If I could please invite the team to play the video. Thank you.
The retired Honourable Lord Vasey, Chair of the UK ASEAN Business Council, Mr. Ian Gibbons, Chief Executive of the UK ASEAN Business Council, Mr. Stuart Tate, Head of Commercial Banking UK at HSBC, Mr. George Freeman, UK Trade Envoy to Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam, Ms. Naz Shah, UK Trade Envoy to Indonesia and ASEAN, His Excellency Teodoro Locsin Jr., Philippine Ambassador to the UK, Mr. Joey Concepcion, Chair of ASEAN BAC, distinguished guests and fellow advocates of economic growth, a pleasant day to all of you. I regret that I cannot be with you in person, but the distance does not diminish the importance of this moment. We meet against a backdrop of global uncertainty. Yet, it is precisely during times of geopolitical tension that we must double down on the partnerships that provide stability, predictability, and growth. As the Philippines share the ASEAN, our goal is clear. Keep the market open, keep the architecture transparent. Just yesterday, the ASEAN ministers reaffirmed our commitment to a regional ecosystem that does not just survive volatility, but thrives despite it. Our priority economic deliverables are the blueprints for the next decade. We are on track to sign the ASEAN Digital Economy Framework Agreement by November 2026, creating the world's first major regional cross-border digital trade. We are also centering our growth on semiconductors, AI, and critical minerals. In partnership with the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, we are ensuring that trade deals translate into tangible opportunities for our businesses and our people. To our partners in the United Kingdom, the Philippines is not just a destination, it is your strategic gateway to ASEAN. We offer three distinct pillars for collaboration. Our manufacturing sector is surging with a PMI of 52.9 this year. We are moving beyond assembly into additive manufacturing and high-value digital design. We invite UK expertise to help us climb the global value chain. Our digital sector is now a 2.2 trillion pesos powerhouse. With the Internet Transactions Act, we are building a robust and trusted e-commerce environment. We see immense potential for UK investors in digital services, AI governance, and e-commerce infrastructure. The creative economy is the heartbeat of our hosting agenda, contributing 7.3% to our GDP. Creativity is our soft power currency. We are establishing the ASEAN Center for Creative Industries and look to the UK, the global gold standard in this space, as our primary mentor and partner. Under the leadership of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., we are executing a whole-of-government transformation to make the Philippines the most attractive investment destination in the region. We have dismantled the barriers of the past, create more drastically cutting red tape and offering the most competitive fiscal incentives in our history. Our green lanes have fast-tracked strategic investments to ensure your capital hits the ground running. We have built the widest network of FTAs in our nation's history. From RCEP to our pursuit of CPTPP accession, we provide you duty-free access to the world's largest consumer markets. This year, we celebrate 80 years of diplomatic ties and 5 years of UK as an ASEAN dialogue partner. But we are not just celebrating history, we are writing it. By merging the United Kingdom's strategic innovation with the Philippines' dynamic young workforce, we are building a corridor of shared prosperity that will define the next 80 years. The Philippines is ready. ASEAN is ready. Let us get to work.
Thank you very much, Secretary Roque, and we look forward to meeting with you in Manila in September. As Ed mentioned, we are delighted to have a memorandum of understanding being signed between ACCA and the ASEAN Business Advisory Council. If I could please invite Helen Brand, the CEO of ACCA, and Patrick Chua, the Executive Director of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, to head to the desks for the signing. There are two memorandum of understanding being signed. The first is between ACCA and the ASEAN Business Advisory Council and provides a platform for ACCA and ASEAN Bank to work together on sustainability, digital, human capital, and professional standards. And the second agreement is specifically with the ASEAN Business Advisory Council Philippines and initiates joint work on digital transformation for SMEs as part of their 2026 chairship. SMEs being a particularly important priority for the Philippines for their chairmanship this year. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a round of applause. if we could invite Helen to come on up and tell us a little bit more about the MOUs and what they mean for ACCA and the UK. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alan. Thank you, Patrick. Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here, can I say, again, at the UK ASEAN Business Council's annual forum, and to join so many colleagues and partners committed to strengthening the relationship and business between the UK and Southeast Asia. So it's especially fitting in that context that we're also marking an institutional partnership between ACCA and the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, alongside a 2026 activity partnership with the ASEAN Business Advisory Council Philippines, focused on SME digital transformation. It's an important moment for us. The regional partnership creates a framework for closer cooperation between ACCA and the ASEAN BAC, while the Philippines activity partnership gives practical expression to that relationship through joint work on an issue of real significance. SMEs are vital to the Philippines economy and, of course, across the region more broadly. They're central to employment, enterprise, and inclusive growth. So supporting their digital transformation is about helping them to build resilience, improve productivity, strengthen competitiveness, and access new opportunities in a rapidly changing economy. And this agenda aligns very closely with ACCA's purpose. We've been present in the in ASEAN for 90 years, so not quite the same as HSBC, with members and students right across the region, and remain deeply committed to supporting the profession and sustainable growth. Across Southeast Asia, we work with governments, regulators, and partners on skills, sustainability, and digital transformation, as well as the wider future of business and finance, as you would expect. We were also pleased to recently launch ACCA's recommendations for ASEAN, setting out practical calls for governments, business, and the profession. And I was delighted that the ASEAN Secretary-General offered supportive comments at our launch. This partnership matters because it brings together the ASEAN BAC's convening role with ACCA's professional expertise, long-standing regional presence, and commitment to capacity building. Together, we can help support practical solutions and useful dialogue that benefit businesses, particularly small businesses, right across the region. So I'd also like to wish the Philippines every success for its ASEAN chairmanships in 2026, and we look forward to working with you closely and supporting that journey every step of the way. To our colleagues from ASEAN BAC Philippines, a very warm welcome to London. We're sorry that the chair, Joey Concepcion, has been unable to travel, but we were delighted to see him online earlier, and we convey our warm regards to him. Thank you all very much for witnessing what we think is a very important partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. If I can invite Patrick to come on up and just say a few words from the ASEAN BAC perspective. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you very much, distinguished guests. It is also my pleasure and honor, privilege to be here and represent ASEAN BAC Philippines and the ASEAN Business Advisory Council for that matter. I want to express our deepest gratitude to ACCA and of course the UK ASEAN Business Council for your unwavering support to ASEAN BAC as UK ASEAN Business Council is part of the Joint Business Council of ASEAN BAC. And of course, ACCA for your support and for the partnership. We recognize that the backbone of our economy lies in our MSMEs, and for the Philippines, especially for ASEAN, it's our people. So with that, this directly strengthens the capacity of our enterprises and more importantly, empowers our workforce with the skills needed to compete on a global stage. We are living through an intricate and frankly very difficult times. The landscape is shifting and the challenges are real. But it is precisely in this moment that our theme resonates, navigating our future together advancing prosperity for all. We don't just endure these times, we navigate them with purpose. So to our friends in the UK business community, there has never been a better time to look towards the Philippines. By extension to our Honorable Ambassador, we invite you to join us to invest and to witness the dynamism of our market firsthand, especially at the upcoming ASEAN Business and Investment Summit. The future isn't just something that just happens to us. It's something we build. So with that, we hope we build this future together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patrick. We're going to get the panel sessions underway. We've talked a lot about the importance of talking, so now let's get the panels underway. The first session is on energy, and we have got a fantastic panel lined up to talk about the ASEAN power grid, ASEAN's energy needs, and of course at this particular time, it is a really important topic. If I can please invite to the stage Philip Napier-Moore, Energy Leader Asia, Mott MacDonald, who's flown in specially from Thailand, Charles Corbett, Global Head, Public Sector, Standard Chartered Bank, and Christina Bergomi, the Senior Vice President, Capital Markets of GE Vernova. And your chair for this session is none other than George Freeman, MP and Trade Envoy to Brunei, Malaysia, Singapore, and the Philippines. George, over to you.
Brilliant. Alan, thank you very much. Please have a seat, folks. We'll make you work for your breakfast in a moment. Good morning, all. Lovely to be here and lovely to see so many senior business leaders on the front line of the engine of the global economy. I'm George Freeman, former Minister of State for Science and Technology, and now back. I'm told I'm an elder statesman of science and technology. I still feel like a young Turk, but that's politics for you. And the Prime Minister very kindly asked me to take on this role as UK Trade Envoy to what he views as the engine of the new economy. Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, the former British part of South China Sea, and the Philippines, where I was lucky enough to be a trade envoy back in the coalition days. And boy, what change we've seen. And it is just extraordinary to see the pace of what's going on, and a pleasure to be back helping to promote UK links between, well, I've set myself two missions really. Great big companies, great companies that drive growth. But given my background, the SMEs in the UK who are shaping the economies of tomorrow in agri-tech, in clean tech, in quantum, in fusion, in space, in AI, who need the bigger companies and they need the bigger markets. So I'm focusing on webinars to help get those brilliant little companies into the supply chain. And then secondly, trying to structure some deeper partnerships so that across Whitehall, every government recognises one or two big projects. Having been in Whitehall, I know how prone it is to chase the little announcement for the minister. What we need is big strategic partnerships, and I don't think there's a bigger one than the clean energy transition. And when I see what Petronas are doing in Malaysia, and I see the scale of the carbon capture and recycling, and I see the companies here turning 40,000 tonnes a year of CO2 into new plastics and novel animal feeds, that feels like a really big transition. So I am absolutely delighted today. We've got three proper experts from the front line of this sector. Philip from Mott MacDonald, and we've sat on various panels. Philip, I'm going to ask you a bit about your perspective on the Asia power grid across the whole of the region, which you know very well. Charles from Standard Chartered, and Charles, not surprisingly, I'm going to ask you about how we finance this and what the opportunities and challenges are for building a financial consortium behind it. And Christina, really interesting business. I know you've done a lot in Indonesia, and I'm keen to get your perspective on that energy transition and how each country can shape its own as part of a broader grid. So, Philip, can you just, for those who are watching who may not be familiar with what the power grid is, what is it and how big is it and how exciting is it?
So it's a good question, right? Because we hear a lot about the ASEAN power grid, but unless you see it on a map, it's a little bit hard to envisage. But we'll give it a go. And maybe we can start with why now for the ASEAN power grid, because it's been talked about for 3 decades. We're now seeing in the last year huge new momentum around it. But why is that happening now? And I think it goes back to what we heard Lord Vasey sharing about energy security. I mean, that is now a key driver of why this is happening now. And energy security, the definition of it is being broadened. It's not just about reduced vulnerability to imported oil prices, though it is about that. it's also about being able to source domestic renewable energy that can power your data centers, that can power your RE100 manufacturers. And so I think Singapore is a prime example of that, where from going from a definition of energy security, which is all within your own territory, they very much flipped it on its head, and now it's about importing renewable energy to support clean energy industries. And more broadly than that, there is a question about excessive dependence on any one part of the supply chain. So having more control over your own clean manufacturing industries is an extension of that. So why now? I think energy security and the decarbonisation agenda. What is it? It's a series of connections between different ASEAN nations that are currently largely not connected. Ultimately, it's a large archipelago. There's very little subsea connections between the different ASEAN member states right now. I think the only subsea connection is between Malaysia and Singapore across the Strait of Johor. And some of these are quite long distance. You have like 700-kilometer subsea connections that you would have to be putting in place, even domestically between Sarawak and Peninsular Malaysia. Within Malaysia itself is a 700-kilometer line. And this is something where the UK has really strong experience, which I think we'll get onto. We have connections with half a dozen neighbours already and counting. We have a number of domestic connections going along the east and the west coast. So I think the UK is uniquely well positioned here in terms of its experience of deploying these subsea connectors, which is a key part of the ASEAN Power Grid. It's not the only part, but it's a key part.
So if we had a map in front of us, Philip, just talk us through, does this grid, are bits of it in place at the moment? Is the plan, like the Oxford-Cambridge Railway, we connect the disconnected bits up? Does it go from Cambodia down to, how should we visualise it?
So I think what you can see right now is there's many ASEAN nations that are relying on the resources of their neighbours. So, for example, Thailand will be importing hydropower from Laos, is a classic one. There's multiple cross-border connections there. There are a few kind of isolated communities across one border that source power from the neighbouring country. But really, there's not a series of systematic connections once you get down to Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and that's really where the work needs to be done. Even within Borneo Island itself, there's not connections between all of the different constituents.
And we've seen in the UK that the grid is completely fundamental to a modern economy, to security. And remember Bill Clinton's team saying it's the economy stupid. I think now we'd say it's energy security stupid. That is your economy. But also, if we're going to drive green transition, you've got to be able to connect the best up to help the dirtiest corners access clean energy quickly. But it also drives the micro-energy revolution, or could, done well. In East Anglia, in my patch, we've got the biggest, the southern North Sea is now the world's biggest wind farm. Actually, the grid is key, but our connectivity out to it, we've made a few mistakes. We've ended up insisting that each wind farm has its own individual connectivity. It's mad. You want to connect them on an offshore grid and bring it ashore. So I think we've learned some lessons as well as shown some of the way to do it. Thank you. Brilliant. Charles, financing it. Who's going to finance this? Presumably there's a pyramid and there's a whole raft of players from top to bottom.
George, yes, you're absolutely right. First of all, thank you for having me on the panel. It's a pleasure to be here. I run the public sector for Standard Chartered Bank globally, which includes our relationships with governments, central banks and multilaterals. I too was brought up with a strict Yorkshire education, so I will refrain from mentioning how long Standard Chartered has been in the region out of respect of our hosts. But suffice to say, we know it well, and we are long-standing and very welcome partners of HSBC. And I think that speaks a lot to how a project such as the Asian Power Grid needs to be financed. It's too big for one bank. In fact, it's too big for commercial banks globally. And I think you have to look at this kind of investment very much as catalysts and sources of liquidity pools globally. Estimates for the financing for the Asian Power Grid range from 250 billion all the way up to 750 billion. But suffice to say that That and ASEAN's Paris-driven commitments represent probably over $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion of investment requirements over the next 10 years or so. And clearly, that needs financing. It is an extremely good opportunity for banks to demonstrate nowadays in the world of tighter capital exactly what we do best. And what we do best is to bring sources of liquidity to our clients. Before I go into the financing, though, I think it's important to just recognize, and it's been mentioned a few times already, the opportunity for ASEAN as a region. ASEAN's digital economy is set to double to more than $560 billion over the next 10 years. And clearly that requires a large amount of energy. We ourselves last year financed a large data center just off Jakarta in Indonesia. And there are many more to come. And I think it demonstrates the requirement for not only energy, but clean energy. And I think the ASEAN local industries as well will do well to benefit from the clean energy that the Asian power grid can bring, particularly in a world where imports now do come with a heavy tax on non-green energy sources. Look at Europe, for example. So a huge opportunity for ASEAN. Clearly for us banks, another opportunity as well. As a bank, we take our climate commitments very seriously. We have stuck by our net zero commitments. We have reached net zero in our own operations already. We intend to do so for our financed operations by 2050. So clearly, a project as large and as renewable or sustainable as the Asian power grid is a key area that we would want to focus on. We have committed to mobilizing $300 billion of financing into sustainable energy by 2030, and we're well on our way there. So these are perfect opportunities for us as a bank to be involved in. I won't go into too much information about the kind of products that are on offer for the sort of projects that were being talked about by Philip, but clearly every bank, HSBC, Standard Chartered, and two others who have joined as sort of inaugural members of the Partnership for ASEAN Clean Energy. We're well versed in whether it be project finance against specific power purchase agreements on individual projects, whether it's financing the equity commitments made by sovereigns in each of their projects, whether it's financing the sponsors that we bring from our global network to work in ASEAN. Clearly, there is a lot to do there. I wanted to just finish by talking a little bit about the role of the multilaterals. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's a world of tight capital for commercial banks. And I think projects of this size would not simply be possible without us working with multilaterals globally. And I think in my 30 years at Standard Chartered, I've never seen a better time than now, where commercial banks are both incentivized and encouraged to work with public sector and vice versa. So we enable them to invest in these projects themselves by bringing them to the capital markets across the region, whether it's in renminbi, whether it's in Aussie dollars, euros, etc. We help finance multilateral in the long term, but we're also helping to finance them in local currency. And I think particularly when you look at the Asian power grid, it's important to understand that the more we can withdraw FX risks from these projects, the more bankable they become. So again, the role of banks like HSBC and Standard Chartered, we've seen that very much in the last few years as mobilizing our own local currency deposits into these multilaterals for on-lending without the FX risk involved. There are many different guarantee projects products which I could go into. I won't, but happy to talk about them later.
Thank you. So I think of this like the kind of energy equivalent of the railways in the 19th century or the internet. By creating a spine, a connected spine, you de-risk, you open up opportunities for the region, for sovereigns, for regions, and for cities and businesses within it. It's a very major 50, 100-year play that will digitalize, democratize energy, decarbonize energy and move ASEAN into the front of the global race to drive green growth.
Absolutely.
Christina, can I then, you've done all sorts of work. It's an interesting business. Perhaps you can just say something about Verona to those who don't know what you guys are doing on the ground in energy. I see a bit of it. Can you just share your perspectives, and particularly on how this big project can drive local, regional, sovereign projects that hang off it like, Christmas presents on a Christmas tree?
Well, thank you very much for this invitation, and also thank you to the UK ASEAN Business Council leadership for organizing this forum. When we talk about projects and electrification across Asia, the scale of the opportunity is enormous. And it's also a responsibility of fostering and developing growth, as you correctly mentioned. I hear a lot of optimism in this room, and initiative, recommendation, expression of interest in signing accord of collaboration. I think the one thing I would like to touch today, really in the business style, is urgency. And the energy transformation is moving faster than the system, which were built for a different era. The challenges that we are facing are solvable, but we can solve them just being all together, which is something new for the region, I would say even for the globe and even for the UK. Electricity demand is rising really quickly as the economy grows, industries modernize, and digital infrastructure expands. Meeting that demand will require energy systems that are reliable, affordable, and increasingly low carbon. It was touched before. It's part of energy security and the security of our lives. From our own perspective, GE Vernova, thanks for inviting me to describe what we do. It's a startup launched on the stock exchange in 2024, actually April 2nd, but is also an 130-year-old company that was originally funded by Thomas Edison. Our mission is to electrify, decarbonize, and lead the future of energy. A third of the electrons globally are powered with GE Vernova equipment to our customers every day, and most of them are in the Asia-Pacific region. At GE Vernova, we are committed to creating a cleaner energy future by investing in breakthrough technology that can lower emission today and in the future. We're driving significant change by modernizing and digitizing the grid, but we're also helping the grid to be fit for purpose, being with higher penetration of renewable energy, but also advancing nuclear power that produces carbon-free electricity during generation by scaling renewable, like wind power and solar, and accelerating coal to gas switching. Developing net zero gas project generation that are ready to run with hydrogen and carbon capture technology. All to say that there is not one recipe that works, but there is a tailor-made approach to each country and to each region. And it does need to meet the energy trilemma. It does need to be also affordable, both as myself as a client, but also in order to foster development, you need to provide electricity that allows growth. I'll just conclude with solving the world's toughest challenges requires the courage, the leadership, and a range of perspective at the table, which includes the banks, the governments, the regulators, the utilities, as well as the expertise that the UK can put on the table. And we'll have more opportunity to share what we're doing as Team UK.
Brilliant, thank you. So I'm going to get in a minute into where the real opportunities are for the UK to help ASEAN achieve this and for us to help each other. But can I just ask Philip a question about the governance of this? I mean, I mentioned the railways, which were built here by competing railway companies in a race for track. And every time they ran out of money, they build a city, make some money, build some more track. And it was Eventually they met up. And now we run a nationalised, for better or worse, but we recognise it's a major piece of national infrastructure. Is this grid, which is it? Is it a kind of a centrally structured, planned, administered, financed project that will then unlock lots of local opportunities? Or is it a series of local sovereign projects that you and others are working to connect so that when they meet, the trains can run, to use a train analogy? I mean, is it sort of big project at the top, or is it lots of little projects that are being coordinated?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, and I'll explain that. So on the one hand, it's the kind of big problem that you just need to make a start. You know, you need to build some links, right? If you don't make a start, you don't enable yourself to resolve the challenges as they come, right? And those challenges will evolve. On the other hand, it is a big systems level challenge, and there's certain things that ASEAN needs to approach as a system and to plan appropriately for that, including, and I think there's been some really good work from the multilaterals, from the ASEAN Centre for Energy. Maybe I'll draw an analogy with how the UK has approached this. And, you know, we have the Clean Power 2030. That was exactly the same challenge of accelerated decarbonisation. Fundamentally, our approach to the supply chain was not going to deliver what we needed in time. And we had to approach it collectively as a program of projects rather than one at a time. That doesn't mean you don't do one first, but you do have to approach it as a program. Yeah.
And let's just unpack we're in a global market, right? There's lots of other countries. Where do you think, I'm going to ask each of you, where is the UK's big opportunity in this? Because we do financing, we do planning, we do major engineering works, we have great contractors in that field, we do the construction, we do energy grid, but so do other countries. Where do you think where are ASEAN thinking? Where is the opportunity for the UK sector to really lean in and support? Let me ask each of you just to go along. Philip, if you...
Yeah, so I mean, if I go back to the fact that the UK has these links with half a dozen neighbours, and most of those are HVDC, high voltage direct current. This is still pretty rare for a country to be so interconnected with its neighbours and to have done so much at once. So I think going back to that systems level thinking, you know, right from your regulation, your procurement models, the technology, to the financing, I think you know, all of that, the UK can really bring some unique experience to the table. We have an initiative right now, specifically with Indonesia, building on the back of the UK-Indonesia strategic partnership that was signed in January between our respective premiers. And I think that's flowing down. It's going to lead to an MOU with more kind of concrete actions. I think, you know, that is an example of where Team UK is putting together the whole, all of the experience across technical advisors, equipment suppliers, financiers, and NISO as a system operator, used to operating a network with high amounts of renewables and lots of HVDC links. You know, all of that is hugely relevant to the same challenge that ASEAN has now set itself. So.
Yeah, brilliant. And Christina, what, as you see in your work, where do you see the UK has got a real opportunity to make a difference here?
I'll think about in particular 3 ways, but I was really inspired by the reference to mentorship during the video message. So the UK can stand up by being coordinated. Like in a competitive international landscape, what our partners are looking at is a solution. And the solution comes with system, with technology, with cutting-edge deliverables, but also with financing, and with long-term sharing of skills and capabilities. So a Team UK approach is powerful because it allows us to engage as a solution partner on the back also of UKF, for example, agreements in the region. Second, by combining technical capability and financing. Again, thinking about UKF, but also the multilateral. UKF, I did a rough calculation last night, has about 35 billion of capacity for the Asian region.
I've got 5 billion in each of my 4 markets, and I think I failed if I haven't deployed it all. But so I think that's a really interesting point, that we need to deploy these export credit guarantees to get that, to get those exports happening. I'm not sure SMEs necessarily know how available it is.
But we know how to do it, and we're happy to have the SMEs that work in our, let's say, Stafford supply chain, as well as together with Matt, and together also on the banking side, to use financing as a catalyst to attract more SMEs. Their timing is scarce. So we need to make sure that their resources are also focused on the projects that are happening, but this year.
Exactly.
And the last point is developing local capabilities. Yeah. And so the UK will stand out most if it's seen not only bringing UK expertise, UK passion and knowledge and technology, but also helping build enduring value. And I'm thinking of sharing of capabilities, training, as well as development of local skills to also operate those strategic assets.
We should come back to skills, because there's a whole skills pipeline here that we can probably help train the next generation in ASEAN as well. Charles, from your point of view, where should the UK be thinking this is a huge opportunity for us?
So I think the UK is already thinks in this way, and I'm incredibly impressed by the degree in which the UK government and the arms of the UK government already are proactively involved in not only ASEAN but other regions of the world where we operate. And I think it's no coincidence that we base, as a bank, we base our government and multilateral relationships head out of London. I'm incredibly proud of the work that the UK government does to encourage foreign governments into the UK. Barely a week goes by without a president or a minister of finance coming through and being welcomed by the FCDO. I also think that we have some of the most outward-looking government bodies of all the government bodies and ECAs that we as a bank operate with globally. Take Garantco, offering local currency guarantees to corporates globally. We use a lot of that in some areas where you simply wouldn't expect to find financing. British International Investment, again, an extremely proactive, forward-looking body here in the UK, which has done amazing things for businesses both in Africa, in South Asia, in ASEAN, where they have an office in Singapore. And I think it's safe to say that, as I mentioned, they are one of the most innovative bodies that we work with globally, able to bring finance in both equity, senior debt, mezzanine, and we have a number of projects and products where we are working with the likes of BII for cross guarantees, for co-lending to local corporates, which is essential to build domestic industry in the ASEAN region. And that's something we're very proud of. Also, I don't think you can forget the insurance industry, extremely valuable to both commercial banks and to multilaterals in safeguarding our own investments and in reducing the cost of capital that we deploy in these markets. So to me, the UK is an extremely outward-looking trade nation, and I think that comes through into our finance capacities as well. And let's not overlook the fact that we have two large UK banks operating as market leaders in ASEAN, Asia, etc. And I think that speaks volumes to the UK's outward-looking ability and our ability to join regions through trade.
We're going to do geopolitics later today, but I can't help observing as well that since I've returned to the region, certainly in the Philippines, America was the natural partner for most things. And there's a lot of commentary across the South China Sea. People now do not want to be wholly dependent on Washington or Beijing or anyone, really. People want the interconnected security of trusted allies. And I think there is a bigger opportunity for the UK in that space as a trusted partner.
Definitely. And we're seeing, as I'm sure other banks are, there is that shift of, there's a concern for not being overly reliant on one particular trading partner. And again, I think that's where the Asian power grid is particularly important, in that it is driving or intended to drive growth in both digital and industrial development in the region in a way which is sustainable. And I think it's the long-term view that we see taken by many different regions across the world. if your exports are driven by sustainable, renewable energy, then you will have an edge.
Yeah. Philip, I want to ask you about total energy demand, because we know that as we have to urgently clean up global energy supply, we also have to urgently increase it. The world is going to need more energy, not less. Now, the grid will connect and create markets and opportunities. But can I just ask you to comment on where the net energy increase through the grid, where we envisage that coming from? Is that work being planned, or is that work that will follow logically when the grid, as it develops? Are we looking at sort of, is there a big nuclear program here? Is there a space solar program? Is there a wind program? Is there some planning of where the different sources of additional energy will feed through the grid?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think I would say it's a work in progress. And the two reasons I'll say that is the crashing cost of renewables and battery is really changing the economics. A master plan written 2 years ago will be largely irrelevant now. The Philippines actually showed the way with the Terra Solar projects, which is the first project of its kind where solar and battery was cost competitive with coal to provide power for 14 hours a day during the weekdays. So it's effectively firmed renewables. And we're going to see more of those projects. There's some coming up in the Middle East for 24-hour power supply. And we're going to see more in ASEAN. So those projects, the cost of batteries is still going down. I think it went down about 40% 2024, 30% 2025. It's still going down. So what you can do with solar and battery is fundamentally changing, right?
Yeah.
But not everywhere has got enough space for solar. And this is where I think most of the ASEAN nations are looking very seriously at SMRs now. It's small modular nuclear reactors. We're doing work with the Singapore government currently on the feasibility of SMRs, and that's something that Singapore is considering. Obviously not made a decision at this point. For the ASEAN regions as a whole, I think creating that option to be able to pursue nuclear as the cost comes down for these modular reactors is of serious interest. We have our global head of nuclear, Ming Tan, here today, and there's an article of his out in the lobby if anyone's interested on the opportunity for ASEAN to harmonize its regulation around the use of SMRs, to create a single market so that it's going to be cost effective and you're going to have market power. So
I was with Rolls-Royce last night, actually. We're talking about skills. You know, and they were telling me that the specialist welding for the SMR program is a 10 to 15-year training program. They're investing in it now with UKRI here. We're developing that cohort of specialist skills, which will be useful for this project as well. Sadly, I've got to wrap up because there's lots more going on here today. Can I ask each of you, 20-second, your take-home message? What's the message you'd like everyone to take from you about the significance of this project? Let's start, Charles, and come back down.
Without drawing an obvious pun, I would say stay connected. I think there are plenty of bodies in this room, particularly amongst the UK government and commercial banks included. Just stay in the story. These things, as Philip said, they evolve constantly. And so, we have to be in the room with those that make decisions, and Standard Chartered very much open doors to those that want to discuss opportunities in the region. Thank you.
Thanks. Tina.
Collaborate and continue to foster the dialogue with government, with regulators, with the actors, and hear their voice. If we get it right, starting with Indonesia, with the work that we're doing with Phil, but also what we're doing in Vietnam, we have a blueprint that we can replicate.
Brilliant. Philip.
Yeah, I think, I guess to the UK businesses in the room, this is a systems problem that I think all of us have a valuable role to help ASEAN with. And I think that there is a lookbook that the UK government's putting together on all of the UK businesses that can help. And I think that's something you can get involved with. And I think to our ASEAN delegates, looking forward to continuing the conversation. Yeah.
Great. Last question. Is there a website landing page? If anyone's watching this thinking, this is really interesting, I want to follow it, I want to stay connected, I want to stay involved, is there a landing page? Where does one go to follow the story, stay up to date?
So the 2 points I'd recommend, the ASEAN Centre for Energy, collates a lot of good material on the ASEAN Power Grids. They are the kind of custodian of this as a regional project. And then the UK Green Grids Initiative has a lot of useful publications, not specific necessarily to ASEAN, or there's some to ASEAN, but generally on this, this whole theme of no transition without transmission. Yeah.
Philip, Christina, Charles, thank you so much. What a brilliant session. Please, will you show your appreciation?
Thank you very much to George and for brilliantly moderating that and chairing that session. Please give them another round of applause. As Philip mentioned, there is a very interesting article on unlocking ASEAN's nuclear potential. We have some copies on the table outside, and Dr. Ming Tan, the author, is in the room as well. Dr. Ming Tan, where are you? There you are. If you'd like to have a chat with him, please do catch him during the networking break. Last week, I went to watch The Tempest in Shakespeare's Globe. Caliban is brilliantly played by a Singaporean named Faisal Abdullah, who peppered his speeches and remarks in Malay, causing a lot of confusion amongst some of the audience. Unlocking the confusion and providing greater clarity on ASEAN's creative economy, would you please welcome to the stage Lord Vasey, Chair of the UK ASEAN Business Council, to talk about the creative economy in ASEAN. And he has been joined by David Hay, founder and CEO of Brand Finance, Karen Brodie, the Deputy Director, Creative Industries Policy and Evidence Centre, and David Lee Pemberton, Deputy Director, Policy and Engagement, British Fashion Council. Would you please give them a very warm welcome? Over to you for the session in English.
I have no idea what you just said, but it sounded good. So nice to be here. Obviously, as the former Minister of the Creative Industries, I'm very excited by this session. As I said in my opening remarks, I'm thrilled that the Philippines and ASEAN are taking such a strong lead in the creative industries. I spend quite a bit of time in Saudi Arabia, which is investing hugely in its creative economy. It sees the benefits that will come from that. I spend some time in China as well, which is always been very focused on the creative industries, and it's great to see that ASEAN as well is taking the lead on this. And at this weekend's Oscars, we saw yet again South Korea fulfilling its own program. It's invested hugely in the creative industries over the last 20 years, and it won an Oscar for the best animated feature and the best original song for the K-pop's Demon Hunters. So it's brilliant to see this. When I was the minister, the creative industries grew 3 times larger than the rest of the British economy, and it was always a battle to get other ministers to understand the importance, to understand that visiting a film set was as important as visiting a widget factory, to understand the contribution of the creative industries to the economy. So we've got 3 wonderful people on the panel to talk about their perspectives in terms of the UK's approach to the creative industries and what is happening in ASEAN. Let's start first with David Haig, the head of Brand Finance, the founder of Brand Finance, which looks at the power of brands and the creative economy. What do you think is the position in... Well, tell us a bit about Brand Finance first.
Well, we are an intellectual property valuation firm. We're largely really an accountancy firm, but we do a lot in the brand and the creative sectors, and we have a lot of people who work in those sectors fueling what we do. But less about us and more about the subject. One of the studies that we do, actually, is a thing called Global Intangible Finance Tracker, where we track the value of all stock market companies in the world, actually.
That's GIFT, is the app.
It's called GIFT,
That's
yes.
so clever. That's so creative.
Well, it was originally the Global Intangible Tracker, and then I realised that's instead GIFT. So I changed it. So anyway, the point is that 60% roughly of all stock market company value is in intangible assets of all types, and a lot of that is creative. So it's an absolutely huge multi-trillion-dollar amount of money. In the UK, the creative industries generates about £125 billion, which I think is about $180 billion, and the export value of that is about 50. So it's a huge industry. And yet my key point, and then I'll pass over, is people still, after all of the talk, and you talked about it a lot, lots of people talk about it a lot, people still have a sort of mental block where it comes to understanding that the creative industry, the IP-fueled industry, is a huge industry. And one of the interesting things about Asia, the two countries which are not in ASEAN that seem to be taking this most seriously are Korea, who you mentioned, and they have a thing called the Korean Creative Content Agency, KOCA, that is pumping money into funding, and that has resulted in the growth of their film industry, their pop industry, any kind of industry that's generating creative content for money. And China has been doing it for about 10 years, and just look at what they're beginning to do. They've realized Chinese physical exports run into all sorts of horrible problems, whereas if you can come up with intellectual property, there are no barriers. You can make lots of money very quickly and easily. So I think we still don't take it seriously enough, but should.
I'm not going to let you off so easily. I want to ask a follow-up question. I mean, I think there are two aspects to what you said there. There's what I find really interesting from an accountancy point of view is I think you have a view that a lot of ASEAN companies don't understand the power of their brand, that they are undervalued because they don't understand the power of their brand. So that's point number one. And point number two is going back really to Alan's introduction, you know, the soft power of the creative economy for many countries in ASEAN. Those are my two.
Okay, well, where it comes to IP, I don't want to be rude about ASEAN companies. I think
you should be, because then it will, challenge them.
They've grown up very fast.
People will speak from the audience.
And there has been a culture in Asia that you sell largely on price, and it's a short trading kind of relationship. Where I think in Europe and America, there's been a much more longer-term investment behind things. I remember years ago, actually, I went to see a presentation by the guy who invented the thumb drive and also the MP3 player. I've forgotten his name now. But I remember he gave a presentation. He said, I don't believe in all that trademarking rubbish. And, lo and behold, he got screwed over. He lost. He invented them, but he didn't exploit them. And I think there are lots of Malaysian companies and Singaporean companies who don't fully appreciate the value of the IP. But it's all rapidly changing. It is rapidly changing. And there are some that do. I don't know. Take AirAsia. They understand their brand. And there are lots of others that are rapidly catching up. And I think they're catching up because places like China and Korea are so single-focused. I mean, look at Labubu. Crikey. Look at TikTok. Look, there are lots of examples of where they have jumped into the space and they're using IP to make a lot of money. And the policy response to that by other countries isn't quick enough. You've got to fund it, you've got to support it, you've got to do all sorts of different things. Soft power, we measure soft power once a year. And, one or two of the issues, we measure various different things. One or two of the issues is what's the quality of education, what's the quality of products that come from that country, what's the value of what's the perception of the culture. All of these things fuel the creative industries, and some countries are much better at it than others.
Brilliant. Karen, you're at the Newcastle University at the Policy and Evidence Centre for the Creative Industries. And in fact, you've taken this panel so seriously that you went to Manila this weekend to the ASEAN UK Creative Symposium so that you could report from the front line. So tell us a bit about what the Policy and Evidence Centre does. I've worked with it in the past, and tell us what you found when you went to Manila.
Well, sadly, I didn't make it to Manila.
Okay, you wanted to go to Manila.
Heart was in Manila. So the Creative Industries Policy and Evidence Centre, or Creative PEC, we do what, as you would imagine from a Policy and Evidence Centre, we do research and evidence gathering into the creative industries across all subsectors, and there are 9 of them. And then we take that evidence to local and national governments and international governments with the aim of sort of helping to shape policy. And we've been doing a lot of work in Southeast Asia. I did make it to Korea recently, but and also as part of my role, I'm on the Global Creative Economy Council, and we were visiting Indonesia last year. So there's lots of going on. And I think ASEAN is a really exciting market for the creative industries because of its scale, because of the youth, because of digital connectivity. And there's lots of opportunities there for the UK. But I think what's really important for us to remember is how different our creative industries sectors are. We have 9 subsectors. Different countries in ASEAN will have a different number of subsectors. I think the Philippines, for example, also has 9 subsectors, but has 78 elements within each of those subsectors. Yes. So things like gastronomy, which is a huge part of the creative industries in the Philippines, does not feature in the UK's creative industries. Some view their creative economy in terms of traditional crafts and cultural tourism. Some are already significant global players in digital content and creative services, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And then others are seeking to position themselves as the entertainment and media hubs. So we know a little bit about Saudi Arabia, but I see Singapore also wanting to be the destination for Taylor Swift when she does her next global tour. But I think there are some real opportunities for the UK, particularly bringing together the opportunities in ASEAN, but also with the high growth subsectors in the UK, which are film and TV, video games, music, performing and visual arts, and advertising and marketing. So firstly, the screen industries, gaming and creative technology. So the UK is globally recognised for our strengths in these areas. And ASEAN is experiencing rapid growth in streaming platforms, gaming and digital media. So this creates really strong opportunities for co-production, for collaboration in animation, visual effects, games development, immersive technologies, esports, digital IP, and countries like Singapore and Thailand and Vietnam and Indonesia are all investing heavily in their digital content media and actively looking for partners who have the skills and the experience and the expertise that the UK has. I think the second area where there's opportunity, and you will know this, is the branding, design, and the experience economy. There's a rising demand in world-class design and storytelling and cultural experiences. And UK firms are internationally recognised, along with our cultural organisations like Tate. We're recognised for our placemaking and audience development, our festival programming, our immersive experiences. And this aligns closely with ASEAN's interest in building creative cities and cultural tourism and entertainment economies. And thirdly and lastly, I want to mention the policy advice and creative economy consultancy, which is what we do at Creative PEC. Growing as ASEAN governments locally, nationally, regionally grow their cultural and creative economies, the UK has strong experience in evidence-led policymaking and intellectual property frameworks and developing cultural infrastructure. So this creates opportunities for UK's consultancies, universities, cultural organisations to support collaborative research, creative industry mapping, cultural strategies, policy development, and skills development for the next generation of the creative industries.
Thanks, Karen. I remember sitting next to the Indonesian creative industries minister when she came over with the president of Indonesia more than 10 years ago. We had lunch at Downing Street, and she proudly announced that gastronomy was part of her responsibilities. And I lobbied David Cameron very hard to allow me to oversee high-end restaurants in London. But he was very, very short-sighted and decided that that should not be part of our creative industries. Are you able at the Creative Industries PEC to kind of measure the economic impact, the potential economic impact of the countries in Southeast Asia? Because it seems to me that it was always my battle to kind of talk about the economic impact of the creative industries. And if you can show what happens if you invest in what some people see as sort of nice to have rather than an essential part of the economy, you can really hit home.
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. Well, first of all, on the gastronomy, that sounds like there's a collaboration there in the making.
Yeah, I think if the Philippines could come over here and talk to Keir Starmer, that would be very helpful.
But I think you're absolutely right. The data, the measurement, it's so key to developing the creative industries. And what we need to do is work very closely with the researchers and the academics across the ASEAN region to help us gather the data. I know that it's not always easy to get hold of this, and I've been speaking to researchers in the Philippines, in Singapore, who talk about the challenges that they face in being able to access data. So there are methodologies that we would hope to develop with partners in the region to help gather the evidence that can then shape the policy and show the value of the sector.
Brilliant. David Lee Pemberton, you're Deputy Director of the British Fashion Council, and I don't need to tell this audience, you just have to look at me for a few seconds to realise that I was Britain's longest serving Minister of Fashion. I always say to people that whenever you walk through an international airport, you see the power of fashion, because you see the luxury brands, not just British brands, but they tend to be Western European brands in the shopping centres of our major airports. I mean, fashion is an incredibly important industry. It's a huge industry because it encompasses not just the clothes you wear, but the magazines, the photographers, the stylists, the makeup. It's a massive industry, and we're good at it in Britain. What's your experience working with the British Fashion Council in terms of international collaboration and working with countries in Southeast Asia and how they're approaching the issue?
Well, I think just to explain briefly what the British Fashion Council is, we are the trade association for fashion design and fashion or fashion-led retail in the UK, although we'd never call ourselves that. Trade association is not nearly glamorous enough for a fashion audience. So we are, in fact, a creative network. What is the importance of the relationship with ASEAN? I would say that the UK has a global reputation of being a centre of excellence for fashion design, but perhaps our manufacturing capabilities are less than recognised in the same way. The same could not be said for ASEAN. ASEAN is a true global centre of fashion manufacturing. It accounts for over 50% of the global exports in clothing, footwear, jewellery and fashion accessories. So there is an established relationships in terms of manufacturing, in terms of ASEAN being a critical part of the global fashion supply chain. What is the opportunity for fashion design? I would say that as ASEAN grows economically, as there's a growing consumer class, a growing middle class, what we see the opportunity for British fashion brands being is in that retail space, moving into those markets. There will be some UK brands, high street brands, who are familiar to our ASEAN audiences. I'm thinking of people like Marks and Spencer, for example, who are already established in the region and have that strong brand identity to support their growth there. So I think from our perspective at the British Fashion Council, what more can we be doing to build on that existing manufacturing relationship, that existing supply relationship, to build a truly bilateral relationship in terms of both retail export coming out of the UK from our world-leading design brands, but what more can we be doing in terms of design leadership in the ASEAN markets? What more can our global centres of excellence in education, the London College of Fashion, Central St Martin's, be doing to help ASEAN nations grow their own creative economies in the design sectors? So not only do we want to see a growing bilateral partnership in fashion directly, but also what can we do as a global leader in design to help encourage growth in other markets?
So I think what is fascinating about the work that you do at the British Fashion Council is you're the most sort of quasi-governmental organisation on the panel, if you like. And I think you mentioned education, for example. We're so used to talking about British universities and indeed British schools opening campuses in Southeast Asia. Presumably there are, if the government leans into it, there are real opportunities to collaborate in terms of education. That's one point. And the other point is obviously, we think of the fashion circuit as Milan, New York, Paris, and London. In terms of fashion design from Southeast Asia kind of breaking through and becoming global? Can the British Fashion Council play a role with our partners in Southeast Asia in that sense, helping young designers really get a foothold and understand it? Because we are, it's not boasting, but we are one of the most sophisticated fashion markets in the world.
Absolutely, and I think where London sits, particularly within what are called the Big Four fashion weeks, London, New York, Paris and Milan, is we are known for innovation and creativity and the market to come to find new brands, the sort of breakthrough brands in the global fashion space. So which is why we're particularly keen to welcome international partners to participate in London Fashion Week, to take show spaces, to do national catwalks. It's something we're actively looking at as opportunities for potential partners. And I would say that the BFC is about to release a new 4-year strategy, BFC 2030, Access, Growth, Creativity. Look out for it soon. Trips off the tongue. In which an international strategy is a key part. How is the BFC positioning itself both as a growth engine for British brands to enable their export to new consumers around the world, but also what role can London Fashion Week play in helping new design nations, or indeed new design brands from nations around the world, promote themselves to a global fashion audience. So again, looking at that bilateral partnership, how can we help you to reach a global fashion audience? And on the education point, we already see it in the centres of excellence across the UK, not just in London, but in Manchester, in Brighton. International students coming to London to study fashion design, picking up that uniquely UK approach to creativity, positioning themselves within a UK creative ecology, understanding that relationship between the UK film sector, theatre sector, the heritage sector, the music sector here in the UK, and using that ecology as part of their fashion education to then either grow their brand here in the UK or to take it back to their country and take that creative sensibility back to their markets and establish themselves there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Well, that's David Haig from Brand Finance, Karen Brody from the Creative Industries PEC at Newcastle University, and David Lee Pemberton from the British Fashion Council. Thank you so much for being on the panel. It's now time for our mid-morning break. So please go out and have a lovely cup of coffee. Be careful with the croissant if you want to look good at tonight's reception.
Thank you very much, Ed, and please give another round of applause to our fantastic panel. As Ed mentioned, we do have the break. After the break, we've got an excellent session on geoeconomics, and we'll have James Crabtree talking to us, helping us understand what's happening in the world, but more importantly, how is that impacting Southeast Asia. After that, we'll have a session on how we are strengthening cooperation with ASEAN and also looking at the business priorities. Please do enjoy a cup of coffee, a very careful croissant, and come back in here. We'll start again at 11:20. Thank you. And please do use the opportunity to say hello to Patrick, who's come from Manila from the ASEAN Business Advisory Council. Thank you. Thank you. Please do grab your seats and we will get underway on this very, very interesting session on geoeconomics. This time last year when we had the forum, the tariffs were announced and we thought, oh my gosh, what's that? What else could happen with Southeast Asia? And what a difference a year makes. To help us understand what's happening in the world and the impact on ASEAN, we're delighted to have James Crabtree, the Distinguished Visiting Fellow at the European Centre, let me just make sure I've got this correct, on Foreign Council on Foreign Relations. And to help moderate the session, we're delighted to have Sir Charles Bowman, Chair of the UK China and UK Southeast Asia Business Group at PwC. Sir Charles, over to you first. Thank you.
Indeed. Well, look, good morning, everyone, and it is a real pleasure to be with you all today. And for those of you who I have not yet met, alongside a career now spanning 42 years with PwC, I'm remarkably long in the PwC tooth, and as a past Lord Mayor, as Alan indicated, I have the privilege now of chairing both our UK ASEAN and our UK China business groups within PwC, and it's a real honour to be with us today. And today, yes, as we focus on navigating a fragmenting global economy. I'm really excited to lead this panel discussion. As Alan implied, we're going to split this panel up into two parts. Delighted that we have James here to my left-hand side. James is going to start off by giving a little bit of his own personal perspective on what's happening more widely. We will then have the opportunity, I will have the opportunity to ask him a couple of questions. And thereafter, we're going to invite Cora McLaren and Duncan Buchanan to join for essentially for a second half of this panel with a focus on the business consequences. I underline the business consequences of what we hear from James. So without any further ado, James, an absolute delight to have you here today. Over to you.
Okay. Is that working? Yeah, very good. So we thought we'd just do this as a kind of discussion, but let me just say a couple of things to start about the situation that we're in. So at the World Economic Forum at Davos this year, somebody made the basic point that there are really only two things that are going on in the world, as in every single panel at the World Economic Forum was about one of two things. It was either about Trump or it was about AI. And I suppose to this triumvirate now, as a kind of offshoot of the first, we now have to add a renewed focus on military conflict given what's happening in Iran. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about what's happening with that, and then a little bit about US, China, and then Southeast Asia, and then we can talk. So, I mean, the Iran effects on Southeast Asia are really going to be quite profound, particularly the energy transmission mechanism. I mean, in Indonesia, there were troops on the streets a couple of days after the initial attacks, and although the government denied this, it was pretty clear that that was a kind of fright reaction. When Suharto fell, energy prices were part of the mix of why that happened. Energy price increases often cause civil unrest, and therefore you have governments around the region who are, really justifiably very anxious about where this might go and what might happen, and are very critical of the US action because it's extremely unhelpful if you're trying to run a normal economy. And so you see a suite of policy actions being rolled out around the region. Petrol stations are closed, subsidies, a whole range of things to try and hope that this will be managed. You then have supply chain disruptions, which are going to be difficult, not just in energy supplies, but on the knock-on effects on feedstocks, on things like plastics, glass, all sorts of things that people are beginning to sort of see filtering. You can see this coming down the track unless this conflict ends quite quickly, which at the moment it's quite difficult for reasons we can talk about to see an off-ramp. You're then going to see individual negotiations between particular countries, and in particular with Iran. So you've seen this with India at the moment, but other people are going to do it too. The Europeans are doing this to try and say, well, can we get our tankers out? And then you have difficult politics. I mean, all sorts of problems. One, to give you an example, again, not to pick on our friends on Indonesia, but Pak Prabowo went out on a limb in order to join President Trump's Board of Peace, a name which doesn't work particularly well this week as opposed to 3 weeks ago. Whether or not it's possible for a country like Indonesia to stay in the Board of Peace, given the criticism of President Trump's war against Iran, I don't know. But it's causing all sorts of domestic problems as well. I mean, I suppose that what I would say about Southeast Asia in general, and we can talk about China, US separately, is, well, how do you get through this? I mean, I think there's a sort of survival mechanism that kicks in terms of domestic political disruption, energy prices. There's also going to be a big push for diversification. I mean, you see this all around the region. So, the Europeans doing deals with India, India doing deals with the Middle East, that in a world of instability and disruption, everyone is going to be looking around to see how can we diversify both in terms of geopolitical relationships, but also geoeconomically. For instance, the Southeast Asian trade agreements, so CPTPP, RCEP, particularly CPTPP, there's a lot of energy now behind the expansion of that, because people are really looking around and thinking, well, if the trade system that we knew is crumbling, what can we now do? What are the other configurations that we can be part of? And CPTPP looks quite attractive. So the number of countries that are sort of beginning to get serious about trying to join that is getting larger. So I think that's sort of the playbook. Survive this short-term crisis, try and diversify, and then try and look at which bits of the system that you can sort of save before they crumble too far.
That's incredibly helpful, James. A very good overarching summary of it all. And as Alan and you mentioned, it's a very, very different environment to where we were 12 months ago. But as you perhaps travel through the ASEAN region, what's the sentiment like on the ground as a start of a tent? Perhaps you can give a view on that.
Well, so I think the way that the region looks at the world is that there's two lenses, right? There's a geopolitical lens, which is fundamentally about US-China, and then there's a geoeconomic lens, which is about trade. And the perverse effect of what's happening in Iran at the moment was, oddly, the US-China element of this had been looking pretty good, as in, we're in a cycle with the two superpowers that is stabilizing. It's one of the rare kind of positive things that's going on in the world. So President Trump very badly wants to go to Beijing and have the same kind of visit that he had in Saudi Arabia at the beginning of his term. Lots of red carpet, many chief executives, big deals. Some of them are totally made up, some of them are real. It all looks great on camera, big win for Trump. As you'll have seen in the Financial Times this morning, I mean, the war has rather put a kind of spanner in that particular works. But I mean, I still think, let's be optimistic and think that the Americans find a face-saving way of backing down in Iran, which is the best possible option that we've got. I mean, not a good one, but that's probably the best possible option. Then I still think the US-China dynamic is much less bad than it has been over previous years. So that's a sort of positive. On the trade side...
And can I just pick up on that? What, under that scenario, a graceful exit, if I can put it that way, how do you see... Because there's been talk of Trump to China in April time.
Well, that's not going to happen. I mean, I think they've already said that they're going to... The meeting that was meant to happen at the end of March, it would be very difficult for Trump to go... because he would be criticized domestically for going to China while there was, kind of American service personnel were in harm's way. But it would also ruin the meeting because, in a sense, he wants the focus to be on him and the deals and, the greatest deal that's ever been done. And if everybody's asking him about what's happening in the Middle East. So anyway, they're going to kick that down the road for a little bit. Anyway, so yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think when it does happen, both sides sort of have reason to want it to happen. And that's stabilizing. On the trade side, I mean, as I say, this is very bad. You have two things that have happened. The first is the war, which is going to have lots of ripple effects that are going to be problematic. And then the second is just the Americans in general and the role that Trump has. So we've gone from the IEEPA tariffs to the 301 tariffs. And in many ways, the 301 tariffs are worse. I mean, they're more complicated. They're going to leave a more messy, different things for different people kind of world, and they create a lot more uncertainty. So there is a case to be saying that actually the IEEPA tariffs were better and the Supreme Court judgment wasn't very helpful.
Okay, and you mentioned earlier the importance of CPTPP and the interest in it. Perhaps give us a little bit more perspective on how you see that developing over the course of, say, the next 12, 24 months and beyond.
So, I mean, I think it's the most functional piece of architecture, and therefore people are looking at it and thinking, well, what could this do? And I think you have, as is often the case, quite a yawning chasm between the potential and the reality. So the potential is huge. I wrote a piece in Foreign Affairs last week arguing that India should join the CPTPP. If you're going to be really ambitious, why not? Now's the moment. Lots of people laughed this out of town. I mean, it is a stretch goal. But if there's a lot of sane and rational reasons why it would be a good idea. You have the European Union and the CPTPP talking to each other. The big picture here is you have the two superpowers who, for reasons of their own, are acting against the order that has been around for the last couple of decades that has allowed Southeast Asia and Europeans to grow prosperous. But actually, if you look at Europe, Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, to some degree India, which is becoming more open to doing trade deals. You try and knit these parts of the world together, and CPTPP looks like that. The problem is that CPTPP isn't even a thing. It doesn't have a secretariat. They haven't even managed to get Costa Rica into the club, let alone the idea that you might be able to talk to China or India or South Korea. So there's quite a gap between the sort of the potential and actually how difficult it is to get these countries who are completely overwhelmed to simply move forward with the more basic parts of the agenda.
Okay, and that brings me on to a question I was keen to ask. Looking at where we are, what are some of the key practical challenges and solutions, dare I say, for the ASEAN as they seek to retain that sense of neutrality in this, as you put it, increasingly fragmented world?
I mean, I think in a sense the countries of Southeast Asia are masterful at this, as in, that they've been balancing between the United States and China for decades, and they will continue to do that. I mean, you asked what the sentiment is. I mean, I think the sentiment is, I think people are very annoyed at the United States, as in this is seen from Southeast Asia. This was a completely unnecessary thing to do. It has brought an enormous amount of instability into a world that was already unstable. Yep. And so I think in terms of that big picture balance, it makes it much easier for our friends in Beijing to say, well, actually, we're the stabilizing force in the world. We're still open for business. I do think there are challenges on the Chinese side as well. I mean, if you look at China's export figures at the moment, the most recent export figures were unbelievable. I mean, it was 20% export growth year on year. But if you look to Southeast Asia and the European Union, it was 30%. And so, and you see no change in the 5-year plan of China's economic trajectory. I mean, no move towards consumption. And therefore, that does create real challenges, particularly for Europe and Southeast Asia, the other parts of the world where you have sort of upscale manufacturing, when you have a Chinese economy that is unbelievably efficient and technological advanced, and has a few subsidies to help along the way. So I think you have that as a challenge, but really the sentiment, I think, is people are very unhappy with the United States. Partly they were expecting Trump to do the tariff thing. I think people had sort of baked that in as an assumption. But Iran, the president of peace, the fact that he has started this unnecessary conflict and now doesn't seem to know how to get out of it, I think this is creating a lot of negative sentiment towards the US.
Can I turn then, therefore, to the UK as we embark on the next 5 years of the UK ASEAN Dialogue Partnership? What do you think we, the UK, need to do differently?
Well, I think we as UK and in general, we as Europe have, I think, a lot to offer in this moment of diversification, because if you're sitting in Southeast Asia or South Asia, the Americans have gone rogue, China's difficult to deal with. You look around and who do you try and diversify towards? And so you have Northeast Asia, Japan, Korea, Australia, not Northeast Asia, but within the same sort of bucket. You have the Gulf, previously attractive, somewhat more troubled as of 2 weeks ago, and then you have Europeans. And so I think as countries in the region look to diversify economically and geopolitically, then reasonably stable, high-income democracies in Europe, of which the United Kingdom is one of the best placed, actually have a lot to offer. So in a world that is, has an awful lot of challenges, then I think in a sense it does create opportunities for business and for governments to develop new kinds of partnerships at a moment when everybody is looking to diversify.
And do you see, I mean, we're increasingly moving in a world where the concept of, we talked trade a little earlier, the concept of bilateral trade is looking more complicated. It's more multilateral. How do you see that playing out, and what's the role the UK could play in that regard?
I mean, I think the UK is reasonably well placed, as in it now looks, I mean, I always thought it was a good idea, but it looks particularly visionary to have joined the CPTPP because, that places the UK within one of the most important trade groupings. I mean, I think there will simply be, more attempts to do at the UK level, at the European level, more bilateral deals, attempts to kind of expand the minilateral and plurilateral deals. None of this is going to make up, unfortunately, for, in a sense, what we're losing. The old order is either crumbling or has crumbled. And the question, I think, for the UK is, A, what can you do bilaterally to sort of protect yourself, but also who can we work with constructively to try and build new elements of this, what will now be a much more complicated and fragmented system. So we have to be looking for partners who are traders, but also partners who are builders. And so, for instance, India is a great partner as a trader. It's less clear whether India wants to be a builder. I mean, in a sense, India, much as I'm a great admirer of India, has quite an extractive relationship with these trade deals. So, the friends that you have, Japan, Korea, Singapore, Australia, who are within these more advanced agreements are also the people that you're talking to try and work out, well, what can we build so that the whole edifice doesn't come crashing down?
Okay, and are there any lessons that we as a country can learn from other nations, other regions, whether that's, you mentioned the EU earlier, whether it's Canada, China, or other nations across the world? What lessons should we be learning?
I mean, I think that the lesson of the CPTPP is, if you want to, I mean, this has been true of UK Indo-Pacific policy in general, is that it does help to kind of think big, because you need these, in a world where you're being buffeted, you need these big strategic anchors. So, you know, the United Kingdom has its ASEAN status now, formal, it has CPTPP, and within the region, not within Southeast Asia, it has things like AUKUS and the FCAP, GCAS fighter project with Japan. Now, that's Indo-Pacific more broadly. These big, bold projects act as your anchors. They're the things that sort of root you in the region. And so I think sort of looking for more ambitious ways to do integration and partnerships has a lot to recommend it, because those are the things that don't get sort of buffeted as, you know, the geopolitical events take hold, and as they will continue to do.
Fantastic. And before we invite Duncan and Cora to the stage, if there was one bit of advice that you would offer to the audience here and beyond, as it relates less to the business, more to the geopolitics of it all, what would the advice be?
Buckle up. I mean, I don't. I mean, unfortunately, I don't think this is. I don't think this is a passing phase. I think the world that you're beginning to see take shape, in which, I mean, I don't want to be too gloomy about this, but you have begun to have people writing articles about the pathway to global conflict. And if you look at previous global conflicts, they don't tend to nobody starts out and says we're going to have an enormous global conflict. It starts in one place, and then you begin to see interrelations between different theaters, and one thing leads to another. Now, that's not to say that we are in the opening stages of this by any means. I mean, I think there are plenty of reasons to think that there will be de-escalatory pathways that we could talk about, but I do think it's going to be more common to see interrelated flashpoints around the world, and that means that if you're, either if you're sitting in a foreign ministry or in a defense ministry, or if you're sitting in a business, you need to have much better intelligence about the way in which these interconnected crises are going to impact you. I mean, it's become almost a truism that, the Euro-Atlantic or the Indo-Pacific are related to one another, and we saw a lot of that with Ukraine. But now we still have Ukraine going on. Now we have the Middle East. We're trying to work out, the US and China as the two overwhelmingly most important countries. I think this is the new normal, and there are definitely going to be moments in which it will get even bumpier than what we're seeing at the moment.
Okay. Buckle up. I like that. Prepare for bumpiness. James, thank you. That has been very, very candid, and we really appreciate that insight and that candor. I also understand that you're about to publish your second book, so we don't have the time to talk about that here and now today, but a minor advert for it. It's about the future of America's strategic presence in the Pacific, so we wish you well in that regard. I'm going to invite onto the stage Duncan and Cora, and we are going to flip this now much more from the geopolitical position back more to the business environment. And great to welcome Cora and Duncan. Cora, well known, Managing Director, Head of Large Corporate Coverage, London and South of HSBC here in the UK. Thank you too for hosting us here today. And then Duncan, Group Director, Government Relations and Public Policy, Officer of the Chair at Prudential. It's a delight to have you both here. Cora, I'm going to start with you, if I may. From HSBC's perspective, working with companies investing, trading across the region, how are business priorities in ASEAN evolving, and where do you see the biggest opportunities, if I can put it that way, for deeper UK ASEAN commercial engagement in the coming years?
Thank you, Charles. And we're very happy to host. It's wonderful to see so many folks here. And I feel I'll give a slight counter, James, to some of the things that you were talking about, because I think the challenges are certainly very apparent and they are very evident to entrepreneurs. What I think is important has been the case for the last 18 months with entrepreneurs that we talk about, which is the reason you invited insurance and banking onto the panel, which is to talk about certainty, stability, contingency planning in business. So what we've seen with clients over the last 18 months is a need to get greater insight both into the business architecture and infrastructure within each corporate organisation. I found that 12 months ago there were organisations working hard to understand the tariff impact because they themselves didn't fully understand their supply chains around the world and how they would be impacted by some of the shocks that they saw. So roll that forward 12 months, what we're seeing is not only businesses feeling more resilient and stronger where they have invested in that, but also looking, as James has said, to diversify their supply chains, but also look for growth opportunities. Now, UK business is incredibly resilient. We might be a somewhat humble nation when it comes to talking about some of our successes, but we do look for growth and opportunities. And I think what the ASEAN markets do is both give organisations an opportunity to diversify their supply chains, and that might be looking at where do they source goods from and who do they trade with. It might also be where are the new markets that they open up into. And so ASEAN markets, which represent a global a block population of nearly 700 million, I'm sure that fact has been used, and a GDP of approximately $4 trillion. Of course, it brings opportunity to a very entrepreneurial nation. And I think once businesses have understood their own risk and their own exposure, they have quite quickly pivoted to understand the diverse block that exists and also where their products and services might lend themselves to those.
And the UK's role?
I think the UK has many organisations who are able to support entrepreneurs in that expansion journey. Of course, you'd expect me to talk about HSBC. Duncan was kindly reminding me my organisation is merely 161 years old. He'll talk about his own in a moment. But we've been in the region for over 130 years within ASEAN markets. And so where we believe we add value to clients is being able to connect them. Yeah. And the UK is world class at that, having large organisations that have a global presence and who are very well placed in being able to connect and embed organisations actually both ends of that corridor. And I think the UK can amplify that opportunity by supporting entrepreneurs in that way.
Fantastic. I'll perhaps come back to that in a minute, joining the dots with a few other nations. But Duncan, if I may, Prudential has a very deep and long-standing set of operations across ASEAN markets. And perhaps looking ahead again to the next UK ASEAN plan of action, where do you see and Prudential see the greatest opportunities for UK companies, particularly in the areas of financial services?
Yeah, thank you. And I think we've heard this morning already and some brilliant scene setting. That horizon, the opportunity and the plan that the UK government has worked on with ASEAN partner status, and to some of James's points actually, is that was 5 years. That was, you know, whether or not we were in the 2026 we're now in, that framework for UK ASEAN commercial engagement and the pillars of it are very well established now. And yes, there's a lot of work to do to refresh to the next 5 years, some consolidation. I think it was a very broad-reaching partnership plan, which had, I forget how many, but maybe 7, a lot of actions within it. For businesses, it sets the framework. So when you hit a moment like now, there is a runway across what we've talked about this morning, many of this, data and statistics. There is a runway for engagement, which at the point when you're looking for stability, you can't guarantee the outcome, but you can guarantee that there is a commercial pathway, whether that's for us yes, we've been in the ASEAN region for over 100 years, and we're deeply committed to long-term provision of life and health insurance. We made a big strategic move to focus at Prudential entirely on Asia and Africa 6-7 years ago. That's because of the growth that we see there and the need for which there are customer services and products that we can provide. But as we've heard this morning, that's a small sliver of what's actually needed for many of the growth drivers that ASEAN is experiencing. There are some bumps in the road to that, but that long-term investment, so for us as an insurer, there's a big out-of-pocket health need in ASEAN. The UK healthcare system is instructive in some parts of that. I wouldn't say flawless. That there's a deep desire to understand and look at the supply chains of healthcare provision, whether that's on the services side or the medical technology side or the pharmaceutical side. I was with a couple of Vietnam conversations yesterday where the export growth in medical goods into Vietnam in the last year has been a massive driver of a 40% uplift in export trade. Health. We've talked already this morning about the energy needs and demand. We are one part of that solution in terms of long-term capital.
Yep.
But there are many components to that, Charles, that you will see at PwC and others, where I would say one of the big needs, alongside the banking finance, project finance, and capital market finance, is the legal requirements to document those projects in a way that is accessible, not just domestically if you're in Jakarta building a new city outside, but to international capital markets that can then flow finance into it. And those are contracts which will be 10, 30, 50 years. So to the instability question, what the UK ASEAN relationship looks like from where we sit, I think, is we have a much clearer set of frameworks to work within. There will always be challenges to ambition to deliver within that, but I think we have a much clearer set of, and credit to all sides who've worked on this, much clearer set of pathways to achieving that.
Yeah, the potency of our rule of law.
Indeed.
Yeah, absolutely right. Cora, any comments in relation to that?
Yeah, I agree entirely with what Duncan has said in terms of highlighting some of the opportunities.
Yeah.
I think some of the challenge entrepreneurs face is the wealth of the opportunity set against some of the information overload with what's happening in the current day. And I always urge entrepreneurs and investors to never go alone. So understand who are the key partners that they can work with. At times we might sound like the provocative friend because not only do we set out the opportunity, we might also indicate what some of the challenges might be.
Yep.
But if you're working with the right partner, they will then come with the solutions to help aid that. So for example, if there are entrepreneurs in the UK who want to expand into ASEAN markets, what we can do is connect individuals to understand the legal frameworks that exist and any of the challenges where they might differ from UK rule of law, as you say, but also any information security information that's needed, IP protection, regulation, and so on, so that the entrepreneurs can be left to do what they excel at, which is understand their business, and we can actually help with that stability and framework.
Very, very, very well put. James, any observation yourself in relation to that? The importance of our rule of law. There are standards and more.
Not that there were very many upsides of COVID, but one of the upsides of COVID was I think that businesses, not just in the UK, but everywhere, became more aware of their supply chain vulnerabilities. And that's not just your sort of immediate supplier, but your third and fourth order supplier, as in, where are you really getting the stuff from that you need? And so I think that should be an advantage at the moment, as in I hope anyway that businesses are better prepared. But it's still quite difficult for businesses and government to have a dialogue on this. Businesses generally don't want to talk or make visible their supply chain vulnerabilities, neither to their competitors nor to the state. And so I was talking to someone from the UK Business Department recently, and they said that what they discovered that they had to do is basically they would have to go to businesses and say, well, this is what we know about your supply chain. And actually the government combine, they're probably just using ChatGPT, but they can find out quite a lot about supply chain vulnerabilities, less important in services, but particularly in manufacturing. And so I think finding, particularly in moments of crisis, finding ways to get the state and business to talk to one another, to be open about their vulnerabilities and to try and work out what we do, whether that's in UK or in Southeast Asia, where there's a lot of vulnerability. If you're a high-tech manufacturer and you've got all sorts of problems, I think that's a real priority, and trying to work out how you move that forward is important.
Fantastic. I've got two further questions, and then I'm going to open it up to the floor. So please be prepared. We have this wonderful opportunity to ask both James, Cora, and Duncan any questions we want. So keen to have about 5, if not 10 minutes of that towards the end. But Cora and Duncan, we talked about China. James talked about it, and taking a step back perhaps from ASEAN, obviously late in January, our own Prime Minister visited China. ASEAN is China's largest trading partner, two-way trade now worth around $1 trillion each year. What do you see, and I underline business, the business opportunities for ASEAN, China and UK collaboration that sort of multilateral approach?
We were part of that visit, and it was important, as they would say, pragmatic engagement. I think what it illustrates, and actually I don't think of it just in China, I think of it the UK's role regionally, is that triangulation function is now critical. Yeah. It's critical to our commercial success. It's critical to some of the supply chain resilience questions that we've been discussing and hearing about. If I think about climate finance as an example, and the sharing of both the risks and the investment required, being able to connect capital markets together, develop resilient domestic capital markets, for which there is a lot of evidence. Everyone thinks, I think ASEAN's been particularly astute at this, learning going back to 97 about actually their domestic resilience. It doesn't mean closed. Actually, there is despite what we see in some places, and if you look back over the last year, the emerging market investment story has been very strong as a diversification question, but as a source of much needed capital, for which the gap, let's be realistic, will not be met by the public sector wherever you are, and it won't be met by the private sector wherever you are. It will have to be a combination of the two, and that triangulation and leverage of interoperable rules that can drive and support capital and channel it is something the UK has a unique perspective on, but is not going to be done just in Singapore. It's not going to be done just in Hong Kong or in Shanghai. It will be a combination, and that requires interoperability. It requires a respect here, for example, that transition means brown to green, not just green. There has to be an accommodation of that. Corporates have to disclose data that the investable universe expands. Mm-hmm. That requires cooperation. You see it a lot from where you sit, Charles. And supply chains come with that. But then I see it, I was reflecting on the creative industries panel. I do love insurance, don't get me wrong, but my first job was in film policy, and my boss at Prudential chairs also the Creative Industries Council in the UK. And there was a Nigeria state visit this week, and there was a huge creative industries component to that. There is no reason through London and through Birmingham and Manchester and other, Cardiff and Edinburgh, that this cannot combine in a globally connected way. And it was a big feature of the Prime Minister's visit was creative industries and culture, with the Royal Shakespeare Company and others. So, yes, we can get bogged down in some of the challenges, but there's huge excitement there to what the UK can and should be doing, triangulating with all of those markets.
Really nicely put. Thank you. Cora.
As you would expect me to wholeheartedly agree. So HSBC was formed 161 years ago in Shanghai and also in Hong Kong 3 months later. So you would expect me to talk about the opportunity there. If I bring it to life with how we've engaged clients on that opportunity, and we're joined by some of them who've joined us on client delegations both to the ASEAN markets as well as to China just in the last year. And a somewhat recent Home Secretary, it doesn't narrow it down, I know, but once said, all of the world's problems will not be solved by excluding China. And I think vilifying any nation, particularly when thinking about economic challenges and thinking about trade, are better when there is collaboration and folks coming together. So one of the examples of taking some clients to China in the last few months is there are businesses who are in the life sciences curing cancer in children and in adults. And what they're doing is taking, I'll skate on some somewhat thin science knowledge, so please forgive me for the scientists in the room. But essentially, they're taking DNA and genomes that have been mapped in the Western world and adding that to what has been created and mapped in ASEAN and Chinese markets, combining both of those, understanding the learning, and then using that to tackle chronic diseases. Now, I'd like to think it's inarguable that that is a great thing to do for the world. And certainly from an HSBC perspective, being part of that journey, even if just a small part, not only brings optimism, but also positivity and is the right thing to be doing. So I think understanding where are the opportunities for our nations to collaborate, where there is great need to do so, and where there is a willingness to be open and collaborative to solve some of those challenges is very heartwarming, but it's also tangible and demonstrable. I use life sciences as one example. I was talking with a colleague who's recently got a new car. And he didn't realise it was a Chinese car, but he was talking about how he'd moved from one model to another, about how it had all of the bells and whistles, and I think it charged in less than half an hour. So it's taken his range anxiety from something like 200 miles to something like 500.
Yeah.
So you could say that's made one banker much happier. But if you also think about an evolution to a more sustainable operating model, that's going to make a difference over time and scaled up in terms of carbon emissions around the world. So again, I think there are more opportunities as long as we're eyes wide open to the challenges that might be faced.
Fantastic. Two super answers and bringing it to life with examples too, live examples. That's fantastic. One final question, if I may, and I'm going to pick up with you, James, at the back end of it too. James referred to the UK's accession to CPTPP as inspired. How do you see that development and in terms of the opportunities specifically for business?
So I'll take that one first. I think there are two levels in which I think it is inspired. I think when engaging with entrepreneurs, anything that brings both optimism and also then very clear routes forward bring more certainty. So, of course, I could add to that the free trade agreement with India, open negotiations with EU, but the CPTPP is helpful because it brings that framework. I think, James, exactly as you say, now evolving in terms of the UK's relationship with ASEAN is very key, because bringing specificity around trade relations, what it means for the export and import of goods and services, is how we bring it to life for entrepreneurs so they can then understand applicability within their business. Mm-hmm. I think it can't be left to the entrepreneurs because they have businesses to run and they have worries to face. So partner organisations such as ours need to play a very important role, which we're proud and privileged to do, to be able to bring those to life and indeed make connections to make them happen.
Very clear. Duncan.
Yeah, I'd just build on that, and given I sit on the board of UK ASEAN Business Council, and we've seen already, we were out at ABIS last year, you have to bring these things to life for people. You have to make the frictional cost of utilisation, very boring, as low as possible, because quite frankly, there is a little bit of a habit, and I'm doing this for a little while, that we remind ourselves that businesses trade and invest. Governments can work on the frameworks, they can clarify the rules, they can remove impediments. And a lot of trade in goods, at least, remains, despite the digital world, quite proximate. So you have to be somewhat realistic about that. I think it is a framework. It needs to be utilised. There are other components that governments are dealing bilaterally or at a regional level on, and ASEAN itself and the Secretariat is working with its members on around investing in those markets in order to trade back. There is a lot of focus on the job creation of trade, the productivity of trade, but when we're talking about, as we've seen with shipping and other things, and flight paths, you also have to be able to invest. And the non-tariff barriers that need to be addressed, there's IMF reports on ASEAN alone. We're all searching for growth in instability, and non-tariff barrier work through the dialogue mechanism set up within CPTPP. I was almost there. Remain really fundamental, including when it comes to services, when we haven't talked, the digital components of this, and we've heard this morning about plans for DEFA, it creates that bridge.
Yeah.
But look, there's great promotional work to be done. I'd remind, this has been for the UK, the export component of this, if we look at growth, is exporting firms have always been more productive than ones that don't. Small firms still struggle to export. It's just a function of, we are a trading nation, but it is a function of our economy. So promoting that and supporting those trade missions, working with partners, bridging the gap, bringing more in. Never been busier. This year, we've got, despite the travel disruption, you could see a trade delegation from markets across ASEAN and ASEAN itself. It's incredibly exciting, but you've got to reduce the friction. And this provides a framework for that. It's not the panacea to trading.
But nonetheless, a framework.
Absolutely.
Yeah, framework, as you say. James, I'm going to open it up right now, but James, one quick moment from you in respect to what you've just heard from the two of them.
I think in extraordinary times, extraordinary things can happen. I was in Delhi a few weeks ago, and the European Union and India just managed to sign a pretty decent FTA in 9 months. Now, the European Union and India, left to their own devices, would very happily have taken 20 years to sign this deal. And it took real political leadership to say, no, we're not going to take 2 decades. We're going to get this done by the year end, and they actually did. And it's as you said, the UK-India relationship is also humming along very nicely. So I think we have a world in which you have the two superpowers who, exert a lot of sway, some opportunities, but also some problems. And then the rest of us are trying to work out what to do in between that. And we're going to have to talk to each other a lot more and do a lot more business with each other, because that's what you've got.
Well put. Question. First one here. And then,
Brand Finance is a service business consultancy right on the margin of the economy. When things are looking good, we do well, and when people start getting pessimistic, it goes off. My question is a very simple one about the war in the Middle East, which it seems to me that Donald Trump has got himself into an asymmetrical war where he thought he could just blast them out of existence and they would surrender, which they clearly are not prepared to do. It doesn't matter how much he blows them up, there's still 90 million of them, and they want to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed, probably in the knowledge that it will screw up the world economy and America. So my question is, how long do you think it will go on for, and will it screw up the world economy? Are we heading for a recession? I spoke to my son this morning, and he said already he is getting a lot of very negative vibes from clients in Asia.
James.
I haven't got the foggiest idea how long it's going to go on for. I think the challenge is that you're exactly right, that the scenario that President Trump thought he might be able to get out of this is very similar to the one that he got in Venezuela. As in, if you look at Venezuela from the US point of view, it might have looked kind of messy over the top from the outside, but they managed to swap a sort of broadly pro-Russian, pro-Chinese dictator for a broadly pro-American dictator, and that was a win. And so I think in his own mind, he thought he could repeat the trick. And what we're seeing now is that you can't repeat that trick, and that the Iranian regime has extraordinary leverage over the global economy, as any Iranian expert or sort of regional Middle East watcher would have told you. So I think the most likely scenario is going to be a world in which President Trump finds a way to declare victory and backs down, but there are lots of other rather darker scenarios as well. And one particular problem is that Israel and the United States are not really trying to achieve the same thing, and that creates another dilemma. So,
thank you, James. I'm keen to get as many questions as possible. We have one in the centre here.
Thank you very much, and also thank you for taking questions from the audience. So my question tries to tie in a few of the topics that we've discussed today. Entrepreneurs, business is looking for optimism. We're looking for opportunities, but also channels to those opportunities and low friction ones. We have an imbalance between regulation in very, very different jurisdictions, which prevent or can be a barrier to interoperability, large infrastructure projects, life sciences opportunities. AI is a very, very big hot topic. How can we actually work together to do the necessary harmonisation of the regulatory framework while still sustaining trust? Because all of these opportunities tend to be high value and high trust. Does anybody have any views?
Cora, do you want to?
Yeah, so there's a lot in there, so certainly keep me honest. I think experience tells me time and time again that businesses do business with people. It's a people relationship. So I'll start with the trust piece because that's so very important. Where I've seen entrepreneurs want to expand very quickly, make a deal, move on and so on, I've rarely seen that gain the same currency and traction and longer term success than when I've seen real commitment to, first of all, understanding what the opportunity is, working with key partners to assess the landscape and where some of the challenges might be, but also where the upside is, whether that's entering a new sector, creating a new partnership, moving into a new market. But then a real investment of not only funds, but certainly time and relationship building skills. Where I've seen HSBC be able to add value is where a client has come to us, or group of clients, and say, I have real interest in, say, this market. When we took clients to Singapore, Malaysia and Vietnam last year, we asked them up front, who did they want to meet? And it isn't a range of just meeting one or two folk. It might be meeting the Department of Business and Trade or the Foreign Office locally within those markets, but also meeting government agencies. Who are the other professional firms within our network that we can connect folk to specifically answer questions that entrepreneurs might have? And then engage in business networking forums to start building those relationships. And particularly as I think of some of the ASEAN markets, all of the ASEAN markets, those personal relationships, building trust over the long term become very key, while also having the ability to ask the questions around regulation, rule of law, so that an entrepreneur makes that investment very knowingly, because it takes significant investment to be able to make that expansion. But as we've seen, and Duncan talked about it already, those businesses who do trade overseas tend to amplify their growth in so doing. So we think it's an investment worth making. That's why we wholeheartedly stand behind it. But it's one to go into in a very structured way. I hope that covered your points.
Good answer. Good answer. Any further questions from that side of the audience? No. Duncan, in which case, would you, any reflections yourself? You talked about the importance of interoperability a little earlier.
Yeah, I'm afraid it takes a lot of hard work and diligence, and it's all the way up and it's all the way down. We spend a lot of time. If I take Charles's comments earlier about the sort of the energy piece, we play a particular role as we're a life and health insurer. We take long-term savings and we look for ways to channel it into long-term productive assets. Some places that's relatively well recognised. Actually, it's not as well recognised as it might need to be in advanced markets, let alone emerging economies. But the barriers remain in a number of individual markets, and what constitutes different asset classes that we can invest in and how our regulators see that varies. We don't expect, we'd like it to be a level playing field for a start, but we need at a local level to go and talk to the policymakers to determine what they want. You then go and talk to the regulator to determine whether it's possible. You then, if you're doing any cross-border or international allocation, need to look at your international architecture. So we come back to the UK government, you say, you're going to host the G20 next year. What does regulation look like and the standards that apply to us to deploy the capital where you say it's scarce? And if, as Charles mentioned, there are instruments, whether the UK government's instruments in BII or export finance, or as a UK as a shareholder in the multilateral development banks, when you innovate, same in pharmacy, a number of sectors, if innovation is happening that you say is a public policy priority and a need, can business come in behind that to invest in it or deliver it? It's never a yes, no. There's always a range. The point we've been talking about, you have to invest the time and resource with the trade envoys, with the regulators, with others to go and have those conversations directly. And then UK ABC, HSBC, Stan Chart, the conveners need to have a clarity of insight to what right down the supply chain need and want from that to feed back up. So it's complicated. It takes a lot of time that some would argue we don't have. But to Cora's point, it's worth the investment.
Fantastic. I asked James the question earlier, if there was one piece of advice you would offer to people and looking through the business lens as they exit today, vis-a-vis the conversation we've had, what would it be? Cora?
Mine is always wholeheartedly, don't do it alone. So you will have professional partners whose, not because it's their job, but their absolute purpose, why they get up every single day, is to help your business, A, be successful, and B, achieve the plans and ambitions that you have. So certainly challenge them, engage with them, and ask the provocative questions, because we would love to help you.
Okay, fantastic. In a sentence, James? Duncan?
Connect. We talk a lot and we worry a lot about the short term. We've seen a lot of progress in the longer term. There are speed bumps, but connect with people who know, be excited about it, and use what's available to you here today. That'll be it.
Fantastic. And make sure we're all buckled up too, in the same measure, to pick up on James's point. James, Cora, Duncan, thank you very, very much. Huge insight, huge candour. Really, really appreciate it. Let's give them a big round of applause.
And a huge thanks to you, Sir Charles, as well, for excellently moderating and chairing that session. Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for our fantastic panel.
Brilliant. Superstar. Yeah, well done.
We've got one session left. This morning we've been talking about energy, creative economies. We've had an excellent conversation about the geoeconomics and the importance of strengthening cooperation. Our next session, the last session for today, is on business priorities. What are the business priorities for ASEAN? Where are the growth sectors within ASEAN? And we're delighted to have an excellent panel where two of them have flown in all the way from Indonesia and from Thailand to join us. Would you please give a warm welcome to Doni Donosopotro, OBE, Chairman of the Advisory Board for the British Chamber of Commerce Indonesia, and a board member of the UK ASEAN Business Council and CEO of Standard Chartered Bank Indonesia. Aimi Pinyapa Sompong, Chair of the British Chamber of Commerce Thailand and Managing Partner TWS Law. And we also have Edward Bowles, Global Head of Government Relations at WISE PwC, who are doing a huge amount in the region as well. Would you please give them a warm welcome? And your chair for this session is Naz Shah MP, the Trade Envoy to Indonesia and ASEAN. Over to you, Naz.
It's an honour to be here at UK ABC today. Maybe I should use this because I wasn't mic'd up. Is that better? It is, isn't it? Right, so that's part of my Energizer session. It's lovely to be here. It's an honour to be here as the UK Trade Envoy to Indonesia and the ASEAN. Oh, we're back up and down. But it's also interesting to be here to follow on from the panel before, because the panel before set out the challenges. So here's the trick for now. What we're going to have from these brilliant panelists is how that we're going to be looking at the opportunities. So we're going to go into from that mode of the challenges, especially being here today on a day or in a week where there is so much turmoil, to have three experts telling us how it's done, how we navigate it all, no pressure on any of you, to tell us where we go from here, the opportunities for UK, for the industry, for our businesses to be strengthening our role, our footprint in the ASEAN. I had the pleasure of hosting the General Secretary to the ASEAN in Parliament. I actually took him for a tour. Apparently he'd never been around there. He did not describe it as Hogwarts, as I usually do. And what we talked about really was what are our shared priorities from Britain to across the ASEAN. And before we get to our questions, there will be an opportunity at the end, maybe, depending on how we get on. One of the things that we were really, really clear about, and this was before Trump invaded Iran, and before the Middle East kicked off, was the actual need for stability and to strengthen our partnerships. Because ASEAN, as the panel will tell you, and I can tell you, is, and you all know, given you're all here, is very, very important to UK growth. Our industrial strategy is very ambitious. It wants stability. We are wanting to grow our economy. We have had, I can tell you, as I was in opposition for 9 years, and I appreciate we have former members of a previous government here. But in that 9 years, we had so much instability locally, and that we didn't do as much as we could have done. And what we are now doing, and the government makes no apologies in doing, is actually giving us back some stability and putting our energies into a region which we have neglected. We have neglected in the past. The trade stats you've heard all morning, but even I'm sat here, and even though I've been out to a region, it never ceases to amaze me the potential of the ASEAN. You know, when I took on this role, when I went out to Indonesia, when I met with you, Tony over there, it really, really does bring home what our opportunities are. And as a champion for British business out there, I can honestly say to you, I'm passionate about what we can do and what it means to me to be here with you guys, to be able to reinforce why each and every one of you are so important and why every single person you've listened to today, because this is the last panel, the expertise that you've had today, whether it's HSBC, whether it's Standard Chartered, whether it's whichever expert you've had, that reinforces why you're important. And from a UK government perspective, I cannot say that enough. I promise you, what you can bring to the region and for Great Britain, because ultimately for me, it is about Great Britain and championing businesses. As we define the next 5 years, given that we've had, when I went out there and I met the ambassador for the ASEAN, she was very, very ambitious about what does it mean and what do the next 5 years look like? So we've had the first 5 years. What do the next 5 years, what do they look like given the instability, given our priorities around energy, given our priorities around financial markets? All of that has changed in the last 10 days geopolitically. So what are we, so to me, the timing of this event is also about, okay, so 10 days ago, this would have been a different conversation. 10 days later, it's a different conversation. And what are now the challenges given the energy crisis that awaits us even in the next 24 hours? You know, for the stability, it really, really puts a turbocharge under how we're thinking about renewables, how we're thinking about our stability here in the UK and across the region, so across the ASEAN. How do we become self-sufficient? And how do the UK and the ASEAN work to achieve that shared goal of self-sufficiency and renewables and carbon capture, all of these conversations? They've never been more timely, have they? And it's frightening as somebody, because I know that this will affect my constituents in literally at the dining table. So, and what does that mean? So whilst we're big businesses here, it's really, really important to remind people that when we're doing what we're doing it for our countries, and that affects the people of our countries, and that affects the stability of our countries. And I don't think that should ever be lost upon us, not just as politicians, but as consumers, as members of society. And I felt that was really important for me to say today as a member of Parliament as well. So we are now going to go to the panel, and I'm first going to go to the far end, to Ed. It's good to see you twice in 2 weeks, Ed. Normally, I don't see Ed very often, but and you've since moved on to Wise. We last met when you were at Meta, and my question really, Ed, is the ASEAN digital economy is expanding rapidly, and cross-border commerce is accelerating. From Wise's perspective, where are the biggest opportunities for fintech and digital payments to support business trading and investing across the region? And also, because I'm going to add something extra, from your experience, given your vast experience at Number 10 and with Meta, given the last 10 days and what's been happening, where do you think that will all fit into it?
Goodness. It's always a pleasure to be with my friend Naz, and by the way, I was at Naz's book launch last week. Her autobiography, Honoured, was published, so congratulations for the second time in 2 weeks. But it's also a delight to be on a panel with Donny, who's a former colleague of mine. And when I joined Standard Chartered, Wise didn't even exist. It wasn't even a concept in the mind's eye of Christo, the founder of Wise. The fact that it does exist is a testament to precisely what we're talking about here, what's going on in the region. And I really want to bring it down to sort of the citizens level, because actually the thing that I think we tend to lose sight of sometimes in our very grand-sounding business forums, and Ian, not to knock the title, but the reality is it's the everyday lives of people that are the opportunity here. What matters to us has to resonate for them, because otherwise we have no opportunity. And Wise, which was founded in 2011, was founded for one reason only, which was to help make the movement of money cross-border faster, cheaper, and safer. And since Wise was founded, in the Philippines alone, we now move 13% of inbound pesos to the Philippines. one new company. That tells you a lot about what the demand is there. And what's very typical of the ASEAN markets, and I'm very humble and modest in saying this because I've got two experts from the region sitting right beside me who know this much more than I do, is that they are huge beneficiaries of inbound remittances from the diaspora of their people who live all the way around the world and who send money back home to keep their families, bread on the table, education being funded, and lives benefiting from their experience elsewhere. But on the whole, unfortunately, quite a lot of the money that they send doesn't end up in the pocket of the receiver or remain in the pocket of the sender. It sits with an intermediary because we're still some way from solving the challenge of faster, cheaper, safer cross-border payments at a global level. And most of the ASEAN markets are not in the G20, but in 2020, in response to the challenge, particularly for the cost of remittances, the cross-border payments roadmap was announced. And last week, on Thursday, the Bank of England hosted the FSB's Payment Summit, which was chaired by Governor Bailey, who is also the chair of the FSB. And what he spelt out very clearly is that we have still collectively got quite a long way to go to drive down the costs, to increase the speed, and to make sure that those payments that we want to make faster and cheaper remain safe at the same time. And we believe at Wise you can have all three. And that's important not just for citizens, but for small, medium-sized enterprises and indeed micro-enterprises. Because not only is there a lot of remittance money sent from the G20 countries to ASEAN markets, but there's a huge amount of trade that flows within that region. And so I think we ought to put our hands up a little bit here collectively as an industry and say we haven't done enough, we haven't focused hard enough on what we can do for the citizens of ASEAN countries to make their lives better by driving down the costs, increasing the speed, and thinking about their needs, not only our needs as businesses. And so I would say that, Naz, for me, is in some ways both the opportunity and the mission for us as companies that have the opportunity to establish ourselves there. But there are also things that the ASEAN markets can do to help that. And so one of the things that we heard last week was an MOU that's been signed by two very large countries in Africa where they have decided to recognize payment firms that have been established in each other's markets without those same firms having to undergo entirely new and burdensome and repetitious licensing processes. It's called passporting. We understand what that means up here. We've done it before. The fact that we left the EU, unfortunately, did deprive us of one of those opportunities. But I think there's a real opportunity here for the ASEAN markets as they think about how they can help reduce the frictions at the boundaries that will benefit their citizens. So having some sort of collective understanding around the ability for licensed entities to passport from one market to another to help provide faster, cheaper and safer payments, I think is one of the key things. Naz, if you'll forgive me, I'm probably not going to speculate on the Iran question, but you can hold me to account later privately on that.
A girl's got to try, right? Okay, Amy, Thailand has recently gone through elections after a period of uncertainty. From the perspective of businesses operating on the ground, what does this mean for Thailand's economic outlook and for the international investors looking to expand, particularly in the Thai market?
Right. First of all, thank you so much for having me here today. And in the perspective to talk about Thailand, I think many of us, perhaps more than half of this room, are aware of what situation ongoing with Thailand in the past 3 years. We have a very much not really stable political situation in Thailand in the past 3 years. Government has changed from one party to another party, which actually somehow we kind of share something in common with UK from time to time. So, but the recent election has give us a very positive direction in a way that finally and eventually we really do hope once that this government form, which is likely to be by within the end of April, we see more positive direction. And I think with the experience that the country and the government has experienced in the past 3 years has actually formed us somehow in a way that this is the right timing that everyone has to stop and focusing more like with the people in Thailand of how we can rebuild and restoring the credibility of the countries, and also like the reform the regulatory to attract more foreign direct investment as well. For this current government, they actually very much more like the came from the previous one before they will dissolve the parliament. So from my point of view, I think the direction of the new Thai government will be very much focusing the same direction, which is the sectors that in digital technology, innovation, green energy, semiconductor, and high value added services. So these are like the area that Thai government will be focusing on. Talking about the business sectors a little bit, I think it's not only in Thailand, but if we talk about the whole ASEAN countries, one of the key things that we are still missing and we need more help and actually more business opportunity for UK into the ASEAN country is somehow related to the skill for the workforce in our countries in ASEAN. We do have the resources, but we don't have the technical skills to add on top. So I looked at UK and ASEAN a bit more in a very much complementary. We offer the resources, which on the other hand, UK can also bring in the technical thing, not just only for in terms of the workforce, technical skills, but this one also related to the digital education, which absolutely clear that many ASEAN countries and UK, like they send the students here into UK, and UK also set up a very well infrastructure in terms of the education structure in each country in ASEAN, including Thailand as well. So you will see like there's many more business opportunities to explore in Thailand, starting from workforce, manufacturing, high value added, science. We also have a very Thai government trying to promote it in terms of promoting Thailand to become the hub for the R&D by using the high technology or like a science. We do have lots of ongoing projects in Thailand, and a very clear example is the ongoing exchange of the R&D between AstraZeneca and Cambridge University, and using Thailand as a hub for the laboratory as well. So this is kind of like one of the key examples. And in terms of the direction, I think the Thai government, they're trying to promote, to attract more the FDI, and therefore we also offered a very, I would say, quite attractive the tech holidays among, actually it's not only in Thailand, but among the ASEAN as well. In terms of the digital, just move back, just hop a little bit there. In Thailand, we have a very well infrastructure, and this is also including digital infrastructure. Therefore, we also attract lots of the data center project. And when it comes to data center project, I think we all know that it requires lots of the water and electricity as well, which is something that Thailand we can actually offer. Which on the other hand, we do understand when it comes to the data center project, they do consume lots of these things. Therefore, in the parallel timeline, we also try to attract more like the green energy and educate the market of you can actually do, but somehow you can also save the environment at the same time. So these are more like you can see a very positive direction from the Thai government that we try to keep it up on what's going on in the world and what the world expected to be in the future. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Amy. Pak Doni, lovely to see you again. Indonesia. I had a really brilliant visit out in Indonesia and Jakarta, and meeting British businesses there. And it's one of the fastest growing economies. From your perspective, what are the opportunities in Indonesia? How do you see that evolving, given that it's one of the fastest growing economies out there? What does good look like?
Thank you, Naz. It's great to see you again, and a pleasure to be here indeed. It's great to see you over here. And I think Alan mentioned actually the two of us just flew in actually from our respective country, and uneventful last night. Actually, so nothing to report, basically in terms of the flight. My comment actually to what you asked is perhaps actually one thing everybody has talked about in the previous session about opportunities in ASEAN. So I think there's quite a lot of, whether you're talking about renewable energy, I mean, all of the renewable energy assets, whether the power generations, the APGs and transmission. You talk about the intangible assets. I think in your session, I mean, that's really something that's very powerful, great potential across ASEAN, it's not just Indonesia. There's another part, actually, that I just wanted to infuse here, is digital assets. I think digital assets is something that is coming to the world. I mean, we see mainstreaming of digital assets into in particular, perhaps local currency, stable coins, with many central bank outfits across Asia, ASEAN included as well. We are pushing for this to be part of the agenda for the AFMGM in April. Another part, actually, that we see very closely, particularly as a financial institution, so us, the likes of HSBC, and Prudential with Duncan as well. The UK has got massive opportunities in ASEAN from a financial services sector perspective. It's the UK capital markets, it's the whole UK asset managers, insurance companies. It's not just the banks. If you look at it, ASEAN would require a lot of financing across the board, right? But I think the key is that whether it's green finance, whether that's sustainable finance, whether that's more on the infrastructure-led, digital infra, data centers, and so on. It's all about trying to find the right structure to understand each of the countries' risks in ASEAN, because ASEAN, it is uneven, unfortunately, from a risk profile perspective. Some are investment grade, some others are not investment grade. So you got to find actually that common platform, common grounds, and also a risk appetite that is healthy enough to understand the market in ASEAN. Now, one thing that we see in ASEAN is the financial market. The trade integration in ASEAN we consider to be pretty good because of the, it's been for decades, the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement is there. So tariff is pretty much among the ASEAN countries virtually none. I mean, there are other non-tariff barriers indeed. But trades within ASEAN seems to be pretty good, and they have diversified the supply chain within the region, if you look at it. However, on the financial integration, I think ASEAN is still behind, particularly on the deepening of the financial markets. ASEAN bar Singapore, ASEAN countries typically are still banking-centric. So if you see the financial support actually that's being given to the economies, whether that's project finance, whether that's working capital or other types of capital infusions, are typically coming from the banks. Rather than, if you look at it, actually there's a shallow bond market or derivative markets, if you will. So this is one thing that the UK can help to build that capacity, where ultimately the UK capital market side actually can benefit significantly by, creating actually that great opportunities over here. So that's one thing on the financial side. The other part, actually, I just wanted to highlight, and it's not specific to Indonesia, but some of the ASEAN big countries. We also see that the UK should see ASEAN as a place where we can also sell inbound investments into the UK. Now, as you know, we were here actually with President Prabowo's visit in January. It wasn't just bringing the president to meet with UK businesses, but also it's the opposite. We brought actually Indonesian, business groups, if you will, to come to the UK and to have a look, because how can they benefit or leverage on whether the UK stock markets, whether the UK sort of capital markets, the Jersey side of things, to operate their international businesses. So many of these actually courting the ASEAN business groups in having that closer relationship and utilizing the UK as part of the international network, I think is another opportunity that we should be leveraging on.
Thank you, Pak Donny. I'm going to wrap up, but I want I'm going to ask you a question, which is two questions in one, really. If there was one message you wanted me to take back to DBT as a trade envoy for the ASEAN and the priorities for the ASEAN, what would you say there would be? But what was the one thing that you'd want me to take back, if I could influence it and get it over the line, if you like? And then what is the one golden nugget of advice that you want to leave for the businesses in the room of what they need to be doing to make sure that they can strengthen what they're doing across the ASEAN? So if we start this side with Pak Donny, I'll go for you first.
Next, I think it's the enabling environment, right? Actually, one of the things that I think the session before us talked about the trade agreements. Now, I just wanted to offer a slightly different perspective, but sitting on the ground actually in Southeast Asia, that's true. I think James was the one actually highlighting about the whole entire geopolitics and geoeconomics, and while there's a lot of countries are diversifying, the EU, India, SIPA, EU, Indonesia, SIPA, that's been completed, and others. The point is this, I think this adds to the complications. If you sit actually in Southeast Asia, you're representing British businesses, then you see that, okay, now the playing field is getting shaken up again. So there has to be a level playing field that needs to be put into the DBT. The message is very clear. Make sure that we protect that level playing field. So for example, I mean, these days, I mean, we see that the art, the US enforced sort of art, there's a lot of, many countries are not shy anymore in differentiating. Okay, this particular, non-tariff barriers, whether it's halal regulation, whether it's, others, in a number of countries, would only apply, but not to the US. So they are not shy in carving out that kind of thing, right? Now, the EU actually has been very aggressive as well, actually doing all the CEPA/FTA related deals. And I think for the UK, we need to do the same thing. Otherwise, we'll be left out. That's actually the real worry actually that we have right now. So I think UK has got FTA bilaterally with Singapore and Vietnam. And then CPTPP has got Malaysia, Brunei covered that, actually along with Singapore and Vietnam. But I think Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, I know works actually are ongoing, both either the route of accession helping, like Indonesia and the Philippines, I think actually helping us to ascend on the CPTPP, and the bilateral with Thailand, whatever it is, actually, but we have to do it fast. I think that's, protecting that level playing field for British businesses, opening ASEAN becomes very important, and ensuring actually that we got a comprehensive trade agreement, either bilateral or on a regional basis with most of the ASEAN countries.
I think from me, if I would recommend, perhaps just wrap just one answer for those two questions that you asked me. I think at the end of the day is narrowed down to one thing is about the collaboration and partnership. And this one I'm not talking only for like as a private to private sector. I'm talking more like government sector together with the private sector. Because in the end of the day, the government are the bodies that can actually make the difference. But all of the action obstacles, all of the real experience is definitely come from the business sectors, isn't it? So for me, my recommendation would be from DBT, if I could pass the message, if some of you might already get bored of me already, but I still remain my position as I think perhaps is the timing to push and accelerate, particularly at this moment of the very volatile situation around the world. I think it's the right opportunity for UK, for DBT also to reach out to business sector and also reach out and accelerate the bilateral negotiation between UK and the countries around Southeast Asia. And in terms of the private sector, I would say this one perhaps a bit like the micro recommendation, but I believe that in terms of engaging more, in terms of shaping the policy environment in the country where you invest in is also very important as well. Many companies, I think for the MNCs, it's a very easy perspective for you to understand it because many of them already have the team for the government affairs that actually do this work. But for many SMEs and the entrepreneur themselves, I think somehow they overlooked about it. And the way that you should do is, instead of being passive and responding to the policies that the government set for you, I think you can be more active in engaging, reaching out to can be from the private to the private sectors, or can also through the association, through the Chamber of Commerce, through the Business Council in each country that you invested in. Because in the end of the day, when we invest in some countries, we're not talking for like 1 or 3 years and then you get the return of the investment back. We talk about at least 5 years investment before you get the return of the money back. And during these 5 years or in the journey up to the decades to 10 years, in order for you to get the most benefits out of your investment, I think it's also very important for you to being active to help the government sectors to feed in the information for the regulatory reform and also to shaping the policy for a better and more more friendly for the business environment in each country. So yeah, so that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
On the 15th of October, the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting is taking place in Bangkok, in Thailand, under the US presidency. And about 6 weeks after that, the US will hand over to the UK for their G20 presidency. I think the opportunity now, Naz, is for the UK, as it prepares for its presidency, to extend a real hand to ASEAN markets, leveraging off the Bangkok meeting, to really have a fully inclusive approach to the next G20 presidency, not least for payments, but also other areas of interest too.
Thank you very much. I think I think we've got time for about maybe one or two questions. But before we get to questions, one of the things that's really clear to me is that there are huge opportunities, even with the backdrop of uncertainty. The ASEAN is open for business very, very clearly. And how do we, as Britain, then step up and make sure that we use them opportunities and explore them opportunities and indeed exploit opportunities that are available for British business and for the region across the pond. Okay, so we do have time for one or two questions. No? Go for it. The gentleman at the front.
Sorry, it's really not question, but as coming from Philippines, I just wish to echo what our colleagues from Indonesia and Thailand has expressed, that now is an opportune time for UK businesses to see and be more aggressive in the region. Next year will be Singapore chairship of ASEAN, and at the same time, Vietnam chairing APEC. So it'll be two ASEAN chairing the regional bodies. For the Philippines, this is our 80th year of relations with UK, and so we are more than happy to dig deeper as to how we further this cooperation moving forward. And just on some of the discussions from the private sector side, I think Amy mentioned about the talks about energy, and in relation to that for Philippines, I think something that we would be interested in from our UK partners and from this side of the world would be in terms of water management. It is a critical resource, and admittedly we would need technology know-how on how this be better managed as we tackle the issue of power and digitalization. And again, more on capacity building for our people and our smaller enterprises. Just to echo that. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just say thank you? Have another question. There you go.
I just wanted to provide. I just wanted to provide some feedback. I'm really heartened by the conversation of the panel. We have been in Malaysia now for about 4 years, and we've been in Australia for about 18. And I think the world has changed, and there will always be relationships which are transactional, but I think a lot of the low-hanging fruit has already been picked. What is left on the tree will need a lot more collaboration, and trust is a key part of it, but I think it's not about selling to each other, it's about doing business together. And that energy and that dynamic produces very different results. It produces partnerships, and it helps us solve shared problems. So if we have a vehicle through the chamber, through the forum, to do that, I think we will all be a lot better off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a brilliant positive note to end on. From a DBT perspective, if there's anything if there's anything I can do to champion what you need, then please do not hesitate to reach out. I know Dominic is in the room here from DBT as well, and I genuinely mean that, because I really, really do see that there are, yes, it might be harder, but there isn't a shortage of, there's no poverty of aspiration here. in this room and across British business to reach out to the ASEAN, and we see that, and we're very, very much invested in that, and the government is making it a priority. I can give you that assurance. So yes, please do reach out if there's anything I can do. But you, amongst yourselves, you're the experts in the room. You're the people with the know-how. You're the people with the knowledge on the ground. Britain is grateful for all that you do. ASEAN is grateful for all that you do, because as a world, if we're stronger for our communities, and that's what it boils down to. If our economies thrive, so it's really, really important. So I just want to say finally, thank you everybody for attending here this morning. Your lunch awaits you, and thank you to the panel. I'm going to hand back to our compere.
Thank you so much, Naz. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our fantastic panel. Before we have two very quick closing remarks. We'll just get the podium back onto the stage. But if anyone would like to meet DBT, they are indeed in the room. Dominic is over here. If you wave your hand, Dominic's from DBT based in the UK. And we have Ian Frankel, who's flown all the way from Manila. He leads DBT in the Philippines. So please do have a chat with them during the lunch, which is going to take place shortly. And of course, make sure you grab our friends from the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, Patrick, while he's here. To wrap up, if I can please invite His Excellency Teodoro Locsin Jr., Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Republic of the Philippines to the United Kingdom, to share with us some closing reflections. Your Excellency, please give him a warm welcome.
Okay, I'll cut to the chase. Today's ASEAN-UK Business Forum 2026 has been more than a series of panels and presentations. It has been a confluence of perspectives, ambitions, and hope of a shared future. From discussions on energy security and digital transformation to reflections on creativity, trade, and resilience, we heard a chorus of ideas that speak of extraordinary possibilities if regions choose partnership to close distance. In a world where economic horizon is clouded by uncertainty, where supply chains shift or snap, geopolitical tensions rise, and markets snarl, the spirit animating today's forum shows us that cooperation is the strongest, most productive force shaping the global economy. Under the theme, Navigating Our Future Together, this gathering captures the Philippines' stewardship as ASEAN Chair in 2026 and our shared conviction that the path forward is best charted not alone, but in company with partners who share our commitment to openness, flexibility, and opportunity. This year also carries special meaning for our relationship because in 2026, the Philippines-United Kingdom diplomatic relations marks its 80th anniversary, a milestone of how far our partnership has come and how much farther it can go. At its heart, the partnership between ASEAN and UK is about three things: peace through stability, dialogue, and a rules-based international order, allowing nations to cooperate and prosper; people through education, culture, creativity, and the millions whose livelihoods depend on the vitality of trade and enterprise; and progress through innovation, sustainable development, and a shared determination to build resilient, forward-looking economies. We have listened to how the Philippines is strengthening the foundations of its economy through reforms enhancing ease of doing business, initiatives deepening industry linkages, and open-door policies to new markets and investments. Yet even more compelling is the vision behind these reforms: advanced manufacturing to strengthen global supply chains, with the Philippines continuing to play a vital role in semiconductors and electronics; quiet engines powering technologies shaping modern life; a digital economy bridging borders, allowing ideas, services, and innovations to flow more freely across ASEAN and beyond; a creative economy, so often the heartbeat of a vigorous country, that is the dynamism of growth that allows culture, imagination, and enterprise to go further together. And within this vision stand the millions of micro, small, and medium enterprises that are the backbone of our economies, entrepreneurs transforming possibility into livelihood, and innovation into promising opportunity. These ambitions dovetail tightly with the strengths of the UK, be it in advanced technologies, green energy, financial innovation, and creative industry. The UK brings experience and proven expertise to complement ASEAN dynamism and scale. Together, they form the outline of something larger than trade statistics or investment flows. They are the architecture of thriving partnership. The economic relationship between ASEAN and the UK is already substantial, with trade exceeding 60 billion, investment increasing ties that deepen further, the foundations of cooperation firmly in place. But the most important story is what can still be built, how much further we can go together. Frameworks such as the Philippines-UK Joint Economic and Trade Committee and the Philippine aspiration to join the CPTPP show the shared commitment to expand horizons. The bridges between our regions are not only being maintained, they are being widened. And beyond agreements and policies lies a more enduring trust between governments that choose dialogue over division, between businesses investing in each other's futures, greater trust between peoples who know that prosperity lasts longer than it is shared. This has been the quiet theme running beneath today's discussions. The relationship between ASEAN and the UK is not just economics. It is an informal exchange on how to navigate a shifting tide of fortune together. As we conclude this forum, allow me to leave a simple reflection. Partnerships are rarely built on grand occasions. They begin in rooms like this, through conversations, shared insights, the recognition that ambitions are stronger when pursued in partnership. Today's discussions have planted many seeds. It falls to all of us, governments, businesses, and institutions, to nurture them, to turn dialogue into collaboration, ideas into ventures, and aspirations into concrete progress. If we succeed, the story that began here today will not end with this forum. It will continue in new investments, innovations, and in the many partnerships that will grow between the Philippines, ASEAN, and the United Kingdom in the years ahead. And so, with gratitude for your presence and optimism about our journey ahead, I thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and thank you very much for your kind words, for your partnership and friendship to the UK and to the UK ASEAN Business Council. We really appreciate it. The final comments for today, if I can please welcome back Stuart Tate, Head of Commercial Banking, HSBC UK, and our Vice Chair at the UK ASEAN Business Council. Over to you, Stuart.
Thank you, and I'll try to bring the energy and the crispness of the Ambassador. Look, it's been a pleasure to host everyone today. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the content. There was some real content today. I mean, let's think back. We had discussion on energy, we had the creative economy, we had geoeconomics, cooperation over the next 5 years, business priorities. But during the panel discussions and other presentations, we covered much, much more than that. So that was serious content in my view. A real standout actually comes from the Philippine government and from the ambassador. There's a warm invitation to work together, and there's a very warm invite to visit your country during your chairmanship of ASEAN, and we appreciate that, and we reciprocate that warmth as well. The other thing I think that stands out is the focus on people. This was a really human discussion, talking about SMEs, you talked about citizens, it came from the audience. That's a whole new dimension perhaps, and it's not just about the numbers and just about business, just about trade figures. Many opportunities, as we talked about, and it's an invite also, a very warm invite to get involved and be part of shaping the future together, because we're the ones that shape it. So I won't keep you from lunch. I just want to say a few thank yous. Thank you to Secretary Oldiger Roque, who recorded the message, Joey Concepcion III, who we spoke to, as well as Ambassador Loxin. Thank you very much. Also to the terrific moderators and panelists. There were some outstanding discussions. And to UK ABC and the team, to Ian Gibbons, Alan, To Ben and Clarissa, who made all this happen, thank you. But also to the audiovisual team, it all worked. Down to the last 30 seconds, I hope. Thank you. And to the catering, I hope the croissants lived up to Ed's promise. Look, UK ABC has got a really stellar program ahead. Again, there's an invite for you to get involved, be part of the debate, the discussion. There are delegations to the finance, energy, economic, and the trade ministerial meetings. Please be part of that. If you want to hear more, talk to them, talk to the council over lunch. Thanks again. Enjoy your lunch. And some few final snippets, sound bites. Buckle up. Don't do it alone. Connect, collaborate, but do it with trust and do it with urgency. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that leaves me to thank you for joining us today. We hope you've learnt a lot and met some very interesting people today. Lunch is now served in the lobby. Thank you once again, and we see you next year. And if you'd like to know more about what we're doing in Manila in the course of the year, please do get in touch as well. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.